Stormgate was already moving when we arrived. Warders trading posts, engineers packing cables into tidy coils, gulls writing sloppy arcs over the sea line. The day after a big job is when things usually slip. Fatigue, pride, shortcuts, so we treated it like a stubborn door. Steady pressure, no yanking. Cade stretched out on the grass with a stethoscope to the earth like he was dozing. "Spines on note," he said at last, rolling to his knees and rapping a pylon's base twice. "Still honest." Serafina planted 2 tripods and ran a drift check. The new dots fell over the old ones with boring precision. 0.12, she reported, not hiding the little smile that line of numbers buys her. Rachel adjusted a warder's brace, then kidnapped the woman for hot tea and gossip, because healing sometimes needs a cup and a laugh. Captain VYR slid her perimeter 2 meters without asking anyone's permission. That's her version of good morning. Cecilia killed a backchannel supply route a noble's cousin kept trying to resurrect. Reka stood in the blue tarp lane even though we didn't need it today. Tradition has weight, and she likes weight where it belongs. We hopped by warp to the coast. Salt in our noses, tide marks like old scars on rock. The sea line held. Local crews looked 5 years younger than yesterday, easier shoulders, longer breaths. A ward clerk insisted we take a pastry box for the Saintus. Rachel accepted, of course. I guessed fillings while I chewed. "Orange peel and almond," Serafina said, not looking up. She's never wrong about food. Last stop. The inland spine. Wind combed low hills. Fences wrote old cursive across fields. A farmer leaned on a gate and tipped his hat the way you do when somebody moved furniture for your mother without scratching the floor. Felt right. By late afternoon we were in the small throne room, no court, no cameras. Marcus wore working clothes with a formal pin. Lyralii wore the calm that keeps a continent steady. "We won't pretend this made the world safe," the Queen said. "But it made it safer. That matters." "On behalf of the South," Marcus added, looking straight at me. "Thank you for keeping the ground from breaking." "We kept it boring," I said. He smiled with his eyes. "That's everything." He handed me a small velvet case. Inside, old gold, dragon and laurel. A simple line across the bottom, guardian of the line. I don't wear medals, but I held that one with 2 hands. It wasn't about me. It was about a ring of people who made dawn quiet. Concord formalities ran clean. 2 paragraphs that made trial membership real, signed by the right hands. Rose slid a folded clause sheet into my pocket. "No one sues anyone if we stick to this." Cecilia checked the signatures like they were charges on a ledger. Lyralii closed the book. "Work resumes tomorrow," she said. "Best sentence in any palace." The side balcony gave U.S. air and the wide line of the river. Valdris looked like light on water. Stella hit my ribs at speed and hugged like I'd been gone a month. "You were boring," she said. "The most." "Good." She shoved up her slate. A convoy time problem wore 2 clean solutions and a scribble that said solve twice. I kissed her hair. "Perfect." She made a face. "Almost." My fiancés collected me one by one. Serafina tapped my wrist twice with her pencil. Checkmark. Rachel leaned into my shoulder, the kind of quiet that makes the rest of the world drop a gear. Cecilia slipped a card into my pocket. 3 bullets about VIPs and cordons for the next phase. Rose arrived late from a call, tucked a paper into my other pocket, and murmured, "Stick to the schedule and the lawyers die of boredom." Goal achieved. Ian dropped out of a warp with hair full of wind and a grin he tried to hide. Routes held. Lucifer says he'll pretend it was all him. "He can have the story," I said. "We'll keep the truth." Lucifer wandered by to steal an orange slice like it was a northern ritual and asked if Dia and Ciola could send people to build air corridors up north when we clone this work. "They're calmer than I am," he confessed. "Use them." We would. When the balcony thinned, Lyra found me. Tiamat stood a pace behind her, watching the river's silver line like it still had old answers in it. "My brother," Lyra said. No preface, just the load that matters. "We'll help when you ask," I told her. "And when I'm not a liability." "You're not a liability," she said, steady. A breath. You're not enough for where he is yet. Keep walking the way you're walking and you will be. Understood. Good, Tiamat said softly, her version of a hug. Thank you for today, Lyra added, meaning the discipline. We'd all agreed to be small so the world could be steady. We'll be here, I said, and we won't break the world doing any of it. That is our rule, she agreed. The palace kept breathing. Crews filed out with clean gear. The guard shifted posts by the book. Engineers laughed over soup. I walked the med line. Rachel was sorting clips in tens. She glanced up and gave me the nod that means enough for now. Cecilia texted a single word, eat. Reka leaned in a doorway, arms folded, eyes on the hall like a wall you order custom. Serafina lifted a synced clock like a trophy. We were on the 10th. A small vibration in my in-ear shifted the light of the day. Reka's voice came quiet and flat, the way important news tries to be polite. Tycho Base is humming wrong. Chief Imani can hold idle, but the yard wants the wrong note. Conversations around me thinned without anyone saying, hush. I checked Rachel. She was already pocketing a med kit. Luna had her gloves and that look she gets when a space needs calm. Cecilia's eyes flicked, counting steps between jobs and gate. Serafina's pencil tapped a time we hadn't yet agreed on and then stilled. Courtesy alerts, Reka said. Sending to south, north, west, east, central. And the 7. Short and honest, I said. She sent. Investigating our lunar yard. No assistance needed. We'll report if status changes. Replies came back green across the board. The Viserian seal blinked first. The Windwards and Creightons chimed together out of habit or design. The Ashbluffs answered in a single word, received. Mount Hua and the Kagas sent a joint nod. Slatemark stamp arrived with a neat, stand by. The 7 returned a simple, noted. I squeezed Stella's shoulder. Homework, General? Aye, sir. She gave me a look that said I was on breath duty later. Fair. Rachel brushed my wrist. 4s, she said. I breathed in 4s. We took the service corridor down to the Ouroboros chamber. Bone rings slept in their cradle like coiled river stone. Engineers on shift stood at respectful distance. No gawking, no whispers. Good crew. Core only, Reka said at the threshold. Me, Arthur, Luna, Rachel, Serafina, Cecilia, Rose. Erebus shadows. Chief Hale meets us inside. Tiamat caught my forearm. Keep it small. No gray. Calm first. Lyra stood in the arch's wash. I'll watch your wire from Valdris. Call and I come. If you don't call, I am pleased. Valeria slid to my palm, plain and balanced. She wouldn't be needed for cutting. She likes being present anyway. Erebus's shadow leaned long across the stone and then folded in, quiet and ready. The rings turned. Air leaned. The floor made room for a circle of black and silver. The moon held up to a mirror. We stepped forward into Tycho's light, not to make noise, but to keep something important quietly honest. No speeches. Next job. The Ouroboros throat emptied us into Tycho's airlock, where lights burn clean and the dust smell never quite leaves the filters. The main corridor curved like a bone rib toward the dome. Through the inner glass we could see the yard. Dark posts in neat grid, floodlights throwing long stripes, and beyond them the crater rim. Earth hung too blue over the horizon, beautiful enough to pull eyes off work if you let it. Chief Imani Hale waited with her helmet under one arm and the stance of someone who had been awake 1 hour too long. A faint hum lived in the metal at our boots. Soft, insistent, tugging west like a river trying to change banks. Boss, she said to Reka. Then to me with the same calm. We've got a hum that isn't ours. The yard lattice keeps wanting to settle into the wrong note. I can hold safe idle, but it's like a bad habit trying to teach itself. We'll listen before we touch, I said. No aruix. Music to my ears, she said, deadpan. Years ago, Reka led the first team that drove a stake here and called it a yard, when Etherite was still myth and Tycho was just a crater on a slate. We scratched we can build this into a wall and then did. Every time I come back, I look for the scratch and feel stupidly proud we hadn't painted over it. We helmeted out of habit, not fear, and took the mag lane. The yard hummed against my soles. Luna raised one gloved hand to the nearest post and closed her eyes. "Patient wrong," she murmured, like a habit that thinks it has time. Serafina stood still for a long count, just listening. 3 points, she said, eyes still shut. Talking to each other. Not loud. Deliberate. Cecilia pointed northwest on reflex. Rose pointed far west a heartbeat later. Serafina turned and pointed south. 3 corners of a triangle you'd miss if you were reading only panels. Mana sense before instruments, technology helps, but it lags the truth. "Those housings have calibration crystals from the last maintenance window," Chief Hale said, already paging the part list. "We can swap one by one. Slowly, politely, or the lattice will throw a tantrum." "Slow," I agreed. "But first we settle the yard." Luna took my right hand. I set my left palm to the post. Together we let Lucent Harmony out in bands, no push, no shine. Just a steady center, a quiet invitation for a system to return to itself. Tranquility is a tool, not a sermon. The hum thinned under our hands. Hale's crew bled flows toward True Idol like careful fingers smoothing a wrinkled sheet. "Hold," Serafina said, voice a metronome. "Release." Again. "Good." Only then did Hale open the first housing. The calibration crystal looked perfect until you stared too long. Angles a breath off standard, a shade too eager to align. Not ours. Not a saboteur, not a curse. Just the wrong kind of right. We kept the calm wrapped around the post while she swapped the piece. Seat. Twist. The note changed like a throat cleared. The post forgot it had ever wanted the other song. "Next," Reka said. We walked the grid to the northwest turn. Same patience. Same rhythm. Erebus unrolled a thin bone ribbon at boot height along the inside lane. Ugly and useful, the sort of tripwire only idiots find. Rachel watched our numbers and hers. When my breath tried to race, she said 4s and my ribs obeyed. Cecilia crouched and pointed at a cable run. "Bored here," she told Hale. "Under stress, this eats a stretcher wheel." Boards appeared. Rose stood with Hale's slate and rewrote the maintenance rotation with 3 finger flicks and a quiet "please." The crew smiled because someone had made Tuesday less stupid. By the third post, the far west stand, the yard sounded like a familiar song you hadn't heard since spring. We didn't rush. We walked the grid once more, palms to metal, Lucent Harmony laid in quiet rings, so the wrong habit had to walk through calm to find itself and decided not to bother. "Status?" Reka asked. "Stable," Chief Hale said, and this time her jaw unclenched enough to prove it. "We'll hold a full loop to be sure. Nothing spiky in the feed, nothing clever in the corners." We stood in the clean light for a breath and listened to nothing. It's hard to celebrate nothing until you've learned what happens when the wrong note wins. Earth floated over the rim, fat, blue, too pretty. The dome dimmed for shift change. Inside the airlock, warm filtered air pushed the dust back. Rachel clipped a sensor on my wrist, checked the readout, and gave me the smallest smile, the one that says numbers behaved. Luna bumped her helmet to mine. Visor to visor. A silent good. Serafina flicked me a neat time mark. Cecilia and Rose had already redrafted the yards, so the what stays honest. Erebus folded the bone ribbon into a shadow like it had always belonged there. We didn't crowd Chief Hale with thanks. Professionals know thanks when they see crews doing their jobs well. "You staying through a loop?" she asked, practical. "As long as you want us," I said. "If it keeps singing, we hand it back to you." "Deal." A tech jogged up, panting only a little. "Chief, west by south panel shows minor temperature creep." Hale's chin tipped toward Rose without thinking. Rose looked once. "Shift the window by 60 minutes for that bank," she said. "Let it sleep through peak." The tech nodded and vanished. "Courtesy channel?" I asked on our private line. "Green," Reka answered. "South, north, west, east, central, and the 7. Received and acknowledged. No meddling. No help." "Good," I said. "Let's keep it that way." We moved deeper into Tycho, not to make noise, but to make sure the quiet held. I passed the wall where we can build this is still scratched under the clear coat. Someone had traced it with a fingertip recently. The dust left a pale streak. Reka caught me looking. Still true, she said. Still true, I answered. On the far side of the dome, a small crew paused at the glass and pointed up for a beat. Earth's trick, even for people who see it every day. Luna's hand found mine again, warm through gloves. Your calm sits better now, she said. Less command, more invitation. Yours taught mine how, I said. She laughed softly and squeezed. A last walk of the posts, a last listen at the saws. No clever hum hiding in corners, no river pulling west. Just the good boring weight of a yard doing what a yard is supposed to do. We didn't save the world. We kept a grid honest, one that feeds ships and pylons and 1,000 small lives downstream. This is the work I trust. The kind that looks like nothing happened because everyone did their part early enough that nothing had to. Log it, Reka said. Tycho stable. Cause recorded as calibration drift. Fix recorded as patience. Chief Hale saluted with 2 fingers and returned to the board. Earth hung blue over the rim. Somewhere under that sky, people were eating dinner and not knowing a yard stopped wanting the wrong song. That's the right ratio of knowing. We turned toward the airlock as a new crew filed in. Boots leaving clean prints in dust. No speeches. No hero shots. Just a quiet bass, a steady note, and a job finished the way I like it. So well it disappears into the next one. We stepped through the yard lock without helmets. Mana holds better than plastic up here if you know how to breathe. Tycho base spread behind us in low silver. Domes, rails, the Etherite yard we tamed 2 days ago. Ahead, the far side ridge climbed like a black knife toward a sky full of cold stars. The regolith crunched once under my boot, then learned my weight and went quiet. Feel that? Serafina asked, already setting her pencil to a clean page. I did. Not sound, never sound on the moon, but a rhythm under the ground. A second heartbeat, deep and slow. A pulse that wasn't ours and didn't belong to anything born under this sky. Luna's shoulder brushed mine. Something wrote here, she said. Not long ago. Reka's voice clicked in from Valdresops. Courtesy alerts sent and acknowledged, she said. South, north, windwards and Cretans both, west, east, central, and the 7. All standing by. No one steps in unless we scream. Good, I said. Rachel walked 2 fingers along my forearm and checked my pulse the way she always does. Stay within your rails, she said. That musical timbre still found the stubborn parts of me and made them behave. Cecilia squinted at the ridge. It's not loud, she said. It's patient. I hate patient. Rose was already moving, braid tucked tight, eyes soft the way they get when she's measuring distances with a part of herself that doesn't use tape. The pull is north by east, she said. Like a spider's thread you only see if you don't want to. We went without drama. Erebus walked in our shadows, tall, quiet, bones wrapped in polite darkness. If something wanted to learn our names out here, it would hear his last. The ridge sharpened underfoot. Earth was a thin coin behind us, blue and white and far. The second heartbeat got clearer, not louder, another kind of patience, the kind that expects to win by wearing down the world. Serafina stopped first. Here, she said, and drew a dot on her page like she was tapping the moon itself. 3 black glass pieces sat in a triangle a few meters apart, half sunk into the regolith. Not obsidian. This glass drank light and hummed when I looked at it too long. Each piece held a shallow sigil cut into its face. Not in any alphabet I knew and too neat to be guesswork. They're not a gate, Rose said, crouching. They're teaching the ground. 3 corners make a habit. Triangulation, Cecilia muttered, disgust curling the word. They're trying to make the yard learn a new rule. Stillness that doesn't end. Erebus set a hand to the regolith, then to the near sigil. Not sealed, he said. Hungry, not full. We break their conversation first, I said. No brute force. We don't give the sender a surge to sniff. Rose nodded. I'll make the corners see each other wrong. Cecilia cracked her knuckles. And I'll cut the lead thread. Every web has one. Serafina set her watch. On my call, she said. We move on 4. Rachel took a step back, eyes on us, fingers resting on the small kit at her hip. No racing, she said. If anyone's breath forgets the rhythm, I pull you. I drew Valeria. Not armor, not wings, just a simple sword warmed by old steel and old friendship, and let the hum settle along my bones. Small truth, Valeria whispered in my head, voice cool and close. Clean hand. On 2, Serafina said, soft and exact. 1, 2. Rose moved first, hand hovering above the nearest sigil without touching. Space near her fingers rippled, not bent, more like a mirage laid on its side. The triangle of glass corners looked at each other across a distance that wasn't the distance we stood on anymore. You could feel the geometry frown. 3, Serafina said. Cecilia's witchcraft is tidy when she wants it to be. She pinched the air above the far sigil and pulled. A single crimson hair glowed between her fingers. Nothing showy, just the lead stitch the whole pattern took its timing from. She smiled like someone taking a thorn from a paw and set the thread aside in a little glass vial she'd brought because of course she had. 4, Serafina finished. I stepped and wrote one thin line in the air over the center of the triangle. Not a dome, not a wall. One line with one rule that Lucent Harmony could carry. Inside this line, movement will finish what it starts. Don't chase the wind, Valeria breathed. Let it finish too. Her edge whispered. The hum from the glass faltered. The ground's second heartbeat tripped on itself and forgot the next beat. Erebus planted 3 bone nails in the regolith around us, pale things the moon liked better than it should. They didn't shine. They didn't sing. They drank. Whatever the sigils shed looking for purchase, the nails took, and gave nothing back. Again, Serafina said, and we did it. Rose held the corners wrong. Cecilia pulled the new lead stitch as it tried to form. I traced the same rule in the same place with the same breath. Erebus fed the nails. Rachel said nothing, which meant we were inside the lines she drew for us. The first sigil cracked with a sigh only Mana hears. The second followed a breath later. The third held long enough to be proud, then split down the middle like glass that remembered it had been sand. Good, Valeria said, almost pleased. Again, if asked. The second heartbeat faded. The ridge felt honest again, cold, still, simple rock basking in a light it didn't care about. Do not celebrate, Rachel said softly, which made 3 of us smile. Serafina rolled her pencil. They'll notice the silence. They noticed it when we arrived, Rose said, standing. This was bait. Cecilia tapped the vial in her palm. Then we tell them we don't like their bait. We weren't done. You never are when someone patient is teaching your ground to obey. I knelt where the center of the triangle had been and set Valeria's tip gently into the regolith. Lucent Harmony hummed along the blade, into the dust, and out into a wedge of ground the size of a small room. No command. No force. Only a phrase I'd learned to write with my hands. When you move, you finish. When you rest because you chose to. Soft, Valeria warned. No pride. Pride is a wobble. The moon doesn't care about that sentence. But it listened long enough to remember its old habits were better than the new one it had been sold. Erebus pulled the bone nails and slipped them into a sleeve that shouldn't have fit them. The regolith covered their holes with a little slide that made me think it had liked their taste. We walk, I said. We took the long line along the ridge, eyes open, senses spread. Serafina marked quiet dots on her page when the ground felt right. Rose hummed a tune with no notes I could learn. Cecilia cut 3 more hair-thin threads that drifted near us like spider silk on a wind nobody else felt. Halfway back, the shadow on the rim looked back. Nothing moved, nothing glowed, but somewhere beyond the edge, something noticed its triangle had come apart and turned its face this way. The chill across my shoulders didn't live in skin. It lived in stories. Predators you never saw because they never needed you to. Luna's hand slid into mine, quick and warm. Don't bristle, she said, barely shaping the words. It likes bristle. I wasn't, elite. Scene. Valeria murmured, dry as snowfall. Unworried. I eased my shoulders and let loosened harmony go quiet. A tune is also something you can refuse to play. Serafina didn't look up from her page. Arthur. I feel it, I said. Deep dark. Old. Not the overlord. Court. Not throne. Erebus tilted his head like he was listening to a very distant bell. An archduke's attention, he said. Not body. Not even hand. A glance. Reka's voice came steady. We have your mark. All continents remain hands-off. The 7 are listening. If you want a backstop, say the word. Keep them out, I said. If we crowd, we give it more to study. We walked the last stretch without speaking. The dome looked small and human by the time we reached its shadow. Lights low, crews moving like they were part of a machine that knew its job. Chief Hale met us at the lock with dust on his boots and sleep in his collar. He lifted a brow the way men do when they want you to tell them the truth in one sentence. 3 anchors taken out, I said. Whatever set them knows the address now. Can you make it forget? He asked. No, I said. But we can make it dislike the taste. Rachel flicked my shoulder with 2 fingers and handed me water. Drink, she said. Then say your next sensible sentence. Next sensible sentence, I said after 2 swallows. We don't sit on our roof waiting for a second triangle. We step 1 ridge out and meet it there if it tries again. Hale nodded. I'll keep the yard quiet. You keep my sky boring. Deal, I said. We stripped off dust and crossed into the main dome. The base hummed at night pace. Low voices, a cart will squeak. The clean smell of heated water in thin air. Cecilia took her vial to a side bench and began sketching the cut she'd made, which notes neat and mild. Rose stood at the viewport and watched Earth without blinking. Serafina copied her dots into a second page and drew a line between the 3 that meant more to her than it ever would to me. Erebus leaned against the only patch of shadow in the room and was very still. Rachel wrote something down in that little book she uses when she wants to remember how a day felt, not what it did. Luna leaned her head on my shoulder. It saw you, she said. It saw us, I said. That's better. She smiled. Yes, it is. Valeria rested across my knees, quiet as a sleeping cat. Hold the tune small, she whispered. If it reaches, we cut once, not pretty. I know, I told her. Good, she said, and went still again, listening in ways only a blade can. Low gravity makes everything look slow even when your heart isn't. The rim ridge beyond Tycho was a line of broken glass under a black sky, and we moved along it like chalk marks. Quiet, exact, nobody trying to be the loudest thing on the moon. We set here, Reka said, planting a boot on a flat slab. Cursed script ghosted across the back of her hand in dull violet, not for power, yet, but to stamp the sight into her memory. Inner ring at 30 paces, outer at 80. No one crosses the inner but Arthur, Luna, Erebus. If I say out, you sprint. Luna nodded once, her eyes calm and bright. Harmony on my call. Erebus lifted a palm. Bone from thin air, clean and pale, rose without a clink. For low pylons, each the height of my knee. They did not hum. They did not leak. They simply were, and the ground around them agreed to become less messy. Serafina paced off 12 points and set down what looked like silver chips in the dust. Timing stars, she said. You can't see them work, but you'll feel when the counts drift. Her breath misted. An ice trick, not temperature, and a faint pattern of plum blossoms traced under her feet as she moved. Cecilia unrolled 3 hair-fine filaments from a bone spindle. Witchcraft, her gift, curled through them like mischief. Chaos goes where I tell it, she said, affixing each filament to rock with a click. Anything deep dark tries to stitch, I'll tangle its first thought. Rose breathed in, then out, and the ridge went 1 step uncertain. Paradox. Angles near her skewed as if shy. If something arrives aiming for here, she said, pointing at the exact middle, it will think it is 1 palm to the left. It will keep thinking that. Rachel, already reading us and the ground in one pass, pressed a clip to my wrist and another at my neck. 2 sips before we start, she said. The music in her voice smoothed my ribs without asking. If I say stop, you stop. I will, I said. It wasn't a promise. It was an agreement with something older than pride. Reika touched her in-ear. Tycho, check. Reika's voice went out over a courtesy line to 5 continents and the 7 as simple words. Interception net forming 1 ridge west. Listen only. No speeches. No drama. Just civilized warning. Valeria lay across my back. A simple sword for now, quiet as a rapt thought. We waited. I felt it first as a thinning in the dark, like a page about to turn on its own. Luna's hand brushed mine. Now, she said softly, and let loosened harmony breathe. The moon's small noises, dust settling, our heartbeats, the whisper of suit seals, fell into a gentle rhythm. Not silence. Agreement. The courier came without wind or sound. A knot of script, all angles, moving like a spider that had learned to be liquid. It wasn't a demon in a person's shape. It was function given teeth, here to put down a triangle for someone much worse. 3 pins, Serafina said, counting. 1. The first pin lanced for the ground like a nail of night. Rose's paradox slid the angle half a hand. The nail struck wrong, skittered, and tried again. 2, Serafina said. Cecilia flicked a finger. Her filament snagged the nail's leading edge and filled it with the smallest chaos. Just enough to make straight forget itself. The nail's line trembled. 3, Serafina finished. The courier flexed. All 3 pins lunged at once. Reflight, Luna said. Harmony washed over the ridge. Not a dome. Not a wall. A request the ground liked. Movement finishes, then rests. Erebus's bone pylons drank what spilled. Rachel's pure light thinned the deep dark's bite without trying to burn it. She is a surgeon, not a hammer. Edge low, Valeria murmured in my head, the first sound from her all morning. I moved. Low gravity stretches timing, but it doesn't change truth. I stepped in under the courier's first pin, let my small law from training hold. First touch bites, no chatter, and shave the nails tip off without marking the stone. The second pin snapped toward my hip. Cecilia tugged her filament. It twanged like a wicked guitar string and the pin missed by a finger. Now, Valeria said, cold and pleased. I slid the flat of the blade along the courier's core, the tightest knot inside the script, and set harmony against it the way you lay a palm on a frightened animal. Not force. Refusal to rush. The knot stuttered, trying to call home. Erebus stepped in, robe barely moving, and sleeved the knot with a bone sheath that did not crack or glow. Contained, he said. Not severed. For a heartbeat the world looked at us. It was not the demon overlord. It was not a god. It was a bigger mind on a farther shore, surprised to find its hand slapped. I wrote 1 gray line, small enough to live between breaths, and laid it across the captured link. No trespass. I did not add my name. The gray carries signatures even when you don't sign them. The look withdrew. The 3 nails loosened all at once as if embarrassed. Serafina exhaled. Rachel lowered her hands. Rose let the angles relax. Cecilia reeled in her filaments with a satisfied shimmy. Erebus's pylons kept drinking like polite wells. Reika spoke in our ears. Outer ring clear. Tycho stable. Courtesy brief going global in 60 seconds. We didn't cheer. Low gravity doesn't need applause. We logged. We bagged the sheath. We looked at the ground like we were checking on a sleeping friend. Then Serafina lifted her head, eyes narrowing. Feel that? I felt it too, far out beyond the rim. 3 faint flickers in a line, nothing like the courier we just pinned. Scouts, not hands. Tests, not nails. A path through the dark basins, mapping us. Tomorrow, Reika said. Wider answer. For today, we do not take the bait. We walked back to the ridge in a slow line. Luna's harmony stayed with the stones a little longer and then let go. Tycho's lights looked small and good in the distance. Valeria cooled along my back. Clean, she whispered, pleased. Clean, I agreed. We had captured a core, said no once, and not broken the yard. Some days that is the win. We didn't sleep. Not because of fear. Because momentum is a tool. The far side was quiet the next hour. Quiet is when you move. Global in the loop, Reka said, laying a palm on a crate. Her voice rang down the courtesy line. South, air corridors if we call evacuation. A short acknowledgement in Marcus Vizirian's clean baritone. Standing by. North, windwards and Cretons. Wind lanes around Tycho. Keep the sky honest. Lucifer's reply, dry and awake. Maps inbound. Dia and Ciola have the north routes. West, Ashbluff logistics, relay and recovery. Jin's even tone. Trucks and bones where you want them. East Mount Hua, Kagu, edge warders if something bodies in. Seraphina's elders answered in her calm cadence. Edges are ours. Central, slate mark. Mirror Tycho's clean wiring. Cecilia's mother sent a crisp. Engineers ready. 7 baseline. Lyra's voice, steady and close despite distance. We will hold in your ear. Everyone heard us. No one argued. That was the point. Luna crouched in the dust and drew a small square with her finger. We make a reef, she said. Not a wall. A place where starts finish and then sleep. Nothing for triangles to catch. Tranquil Reef, I said. And the name felt right. We built it the way you teach a room to be kind. Erebus set 4 more bone anchors along the far side lip, low, shy things that would not scare the ground. These will swallow leftovers and return them to stillness, he said. No echo. No stink. Seraphina marked the perimeter with timing stars again, this time with a second rhythm nested under the first. If the counts slip by a hair, we feel it, she said. If they slip by 2, we pull. Cecilia walked the line, laying down new filaments that weren't traps this time but little reminders. Don't lock too fast. Her witchcraft shaped the chaos into a helpful drift. If a stitch tries to take hold, it slides then stops, she said. Annoying, not violent. Rose folded the sight lines so the reef's face looked soft. Aggression inverts, she murmured. Anything that arrives to thrust finds itself. Finished. No handle left. Rachel stood in the center and lifted both hands. Pure light pooled from her like a spring. Not the blazing, world-biting kind that erases. The kind that washes a fever down. Her voice, that musical timbre that always cuts through my worst impulses, filled our suits with a warm line. Breathe on 4s, she said. And everyone did, even Erebus. Luna and I walked the boundary. Valeria rode my palm, light and still. I spoke the reef's law to the dust, the bone, the air, the little memories in the rock from 1,000 meteor taps. Here starts conclude, I said, simple as I could make it. Nothing half-made holds. Harmony spread like ink in thin paper. Not far, just enough. Reka's hand lifted. Incoming, she said, and no one jumped. This courier was stronger. The lines in it had weight and memory. When it pressed at the reef's edge, the counts slid a hair. Seraphina's pencil tapped once against her wrist. Hold, she said. Not a command, an agreement. The courier shoved. It met softness that did not break. It tried to plant the first nail. Luna deepened harmony. The nail finished its thrust without biting anything and, with no friction to love, went slack. It tried to lock the second nail onto a nothing that looked, by Rose's careful cheating, exactly like a finished job. The nail relaxed as if proud of itself. The third nail surged for me like it could smell the gray. A part of me wanted to meet it with noise. Valeria's whisper slid through my wrist. Don't chase. I didn't. I stepped 1 pace to the side and let the reef sentence do the work. The third nail completed an imaginary journey and hung there, dumb and content, like a story that forgot its last page. Rachel's light shone a fraction brighter. Not blasting, just steadying the hands that wanted to rush. Finish, then rest, she said, and I realized she was speaking to us as much as to the courier. Cecilia tugged a single filament. Bottle, she said. and the leading stitch that connected all 3 nails to the courier's core rolled up like thread under a thumb. She caught it in a small glass vial that shimmered with barely leashed mischief. Souvenir. The courier spasmed. Luna shook her head, one tiny motion. Erebus lifted one palm and the bone anchors deepened by a finger. The courier folded, not like a defeated enemy, but like an exhausted worker told the job was already done. Seraphina's counts went true. Rose let the angles flatten. My shoulders let go without me telling them to. Reka spoke into the courtesy line. Reef holds. No splash. Logging template for mirror sites. Send it, Marcus said from the south. Received, Central added. Copy, North chimed. Copy, East echoed. Copy, West. Lyra's voice came last. The same clear, well done. We stayed long enough to be sure the ground wasn't pretending. Erebus walked the anchors once more like a careful gardener. Rachel checked 3 pulses and a set of nerves, mine included. Seraphina rubbed a smudge off a timing star that didn't exist, then smiled her small private smile that means the math behaved. Cecilia slid 2 more bottled lead stitches into her jacket with a grin. Rose tucked a note in my palm. A little drawing of our reef as a string of soft knots. Stand down to watch, Reka said finally. Small team rotates here. Tycho resumes normal pull. No one gets brave on their own. We turned toward the ridge. Movement finished. Rest invited. That's how it should be. I had taken 3 steps when my skin prickled. It wasn't the courier's parent mind. It wasn't the demon overlord, whose memory lives in my bones like the taste of iron. This was something narrower, colder, with the patience of stone and the humor of knives. A presence pressed against the far side dark, just beyond where the reef could make it sleepy. I didn't see a face. I felt a pressure gradient, like the tide deciding whether to come in or take the beach with it. An archduke. Not rumor. Not noise. A name I didn't know yet. Leaning a shoulder into the door to see if the hinges squeaked. Arthur, Rachel asked, hearing the change in my breath the way she always does. I'm fine, I said, and meant it. We're not alone anymore. Valeria warmed against my palm, amused. At last, she murmured. Something with teeth. I looked at the black beyond the reef and let a small smile come without bravado. We had spent a year learning how to keep the world boring when boring saved lives. That work wasn't over. But for the first time since the basilisk, I could tell the truth to myself without flinching. Finally, an opponent somewhere near my level. Not one I could crush with a laugh. Not one I should chase. But one I could meet standing up, sword honest, harmony steady. Gray a page I wouldn't turn unless I had to. Log the feel, Reka said softly in my ear. We're not giving it a name yet. Logged, I answered. The reef breathed once, slow and sure. The moon held, and the far dark smiled back like a challenge we were ready to accept. When the time was right, the reef twitched. Not the wards, not the meters, my skin. The tranquil reef we'd laid around Tycho Yard is a soft rule, like a held breath. When something heavy leans on it, the breath forgets how to finish. Luna's head lifted. Rachel went still. Reka's hand slid to her sword. We all felt it. South rim, Seraphina said, eyes half closed. Pressure sweet, but wrong. Courtesy pings are out, Reka said into short band. South, north, both houses, west, east, both lines, central and the 7. All acknowledged. Good, I said. Keep it that way. We stood on the moon, Tycho's far rim, the yard lights throwing clean cones across gray rock. No air, but our suits carried voices fine. The reef did the rest, harmony from Luna told stray forces to behave. It wouldn't stop a high radiant. It would make the ground honest while we fought. Arthur. Rachel's voice in my ear was warm and steady. Breathe on 4s. I did. In 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. Shadows gathered past the lights. Not shadows, wants. 100 small desires took shape at the reef's edge. A bowl of hot soup. A bed that knew your name. A medal you never got. A hand you missed. Bait you reach for without thinking. Contain, not crush. I said. No big plays. Don't feed it. Copy, Reka answered. She uncapped a marker and wrote along her own wrist in tight, ugly script that glowed a heartbeat and sank into skin. Remember yourself. Reject false sufficiency. She caught my left wrist and wrote the same. It stung, then eased, like a tired tendon settling. Cecilia's grin touched the channel. I'll tangle their stitching, not blow it up. Angles to one, Rose said. If it throws 10 lies, I make it pick one. Footing, Serafina added. An ice rose opened on the regolith, perfect petals in vacuum. She set more, a small constellation to mark true pivot points for anyone who needed them. Bone screens up, Erebus said calmly. Low ridges of pale ossuary rose along the reef's ring, quiet as snowfall. Luna set her palm between my shoulder blades. Harmony thickened at the fence. No glare, no shove. Just rules written like a lullaby. The reef sentence locked in, finish the work, then rest. That's enough, I told them. Containment only. Keep the yard clean. The thing in the dark is mine. A beat of silence. The kind that holds disagreement. Arthur, Rachel said gently. I know, I said. I want it one-on-one. Not to be stubborn. If we stack 7 gifts on him, the reef starts learning bad habits to keep up. We need it boring tomorrow. Reka broke the pause with a dry chuckle. Fine. You get your duel. We keep your corners clean. Don't overextend, Rachel said. If I call stop, I stop, I promised. The dark at the rim condensed and stood up. Tall. Humanoid because he felt like being polite. Skin black like cooled glass. Cloak of night silk with starlight caught in the weave. Where a face should be, a smooth plane and the hint of a smile not yet made. His voice arrived in my head before it reached my ears. Rich and easy. Not words at first, feelings arranged like speech. Relief. Fulfillment. The end of the last 10% of effort no one thanks you for. You crave rest, he breathed. I can make it the rule. Finish, I said aloud, for me. Then rest. Luna's hand pressed a fraction harder. The reef purred. He inclined his head like a courtier. When he chose words, he let them show teeth. A tidy field, he said. Your world loves fences. We prefer rooms. You could sleep in ours. Name? Reka asked on open band. She knew he didn't have to answer. Names matter. He smiled I couldn't see. Archduke Reverian of Velvet, he said. Male. Confident. The scent of lust on the edges. Not cloying. Clean. Practiced. Dangerous. High radiant by weight. Back up off my yard, I said, drawing Valeria. She warmed along my forearm like a cat stretching. No plates today, no gray, no tricks. Just a sword that knows my hand. Reverian's mantle shifted. Once thickened, less generic now. A lunch with a mother from a life that wasn't mine but felt like it. A room where no one needed me. A laugh I missed, too close to a kitchen with tea. Containment, I said. Cecilia snapped her fingers. Thin chaos threads slid between bait images and tied their timing into a knot. 3 desires tripped each other and turned to smoke. Rose folded a cascade of lures into a single wrong angle that couldn't stand. Serafina's frost flowers gave the warders places to look so their eyes didn't drift. Erebus's bone ridges drank a slow glamour that tried to crawl along the ground like fog, yellowed, shed their outer layer, and grew back clean. Rachel's voice came like a palm on my shoulder. In 4. Out 4. I rolled my wrists. The old truths sat where I left them. First touch bites. Shortest line holds. Exit clean. No show. No rush. Keep the bubble small. Come take me, Reverian said, and the velvet dominion unfolded. Not a wall. A mood given shape. Color dropped half a shade. The stars above looked closer. The regolith underfoot tried to decide it was a couch. The movement of my friends at the edges wanted to resolve into loops. Start smiling, keep smiling, never stop because nothing changes. Luna whispered harmony into the reef, and the reef made the dominion red first. Finish, then rest. The couch idea argued, lost half the argument, and sulked. Why fight tide? Reverian asked. A ribbon of dark silk peeled from his mantle and lengthened into a lance. Not metal, promise. If it touched you, your reaching would be over forever, and you would thank it. He flicked the lance. It wasn't quick so much as early. It arrived where I'd be if I got greedy. Valeria brushed my palm with a thought like the edge of breath. Lo! I dipped. First touch bit. The point glanced along a line that didn't care about hope or despair. Just truth. Glitter, then nothing. His head tilted. Amused. Polite, he said. But tired. Star moths poured from his cloak. Each a tiny door into a room you thought about once and forgot. If you looked, they grew. If you reached, they came. Do not look, I told myself. Do not reach. Eyes on me, Reka told the line. Anchor on the work. No snacks for the devil. Cecilia knotted 3 moth doors into one snarl that couldn't open. Rose forced another cluster to pick a single door, then closed it by making it already used. Serafina sketched a frost thread between 2 currents, a string of tiny bells in vacuum. The mind followed the bells instead of the bait. Reverian noticed the teamwork and let the unseen smile widen. You all want the same thing, he said. That's rare. I prefer rooms where lovers ask for different songs. A second lance grew, longer. His weight deepened. High Radiant fully awake now. The Dominion stopped trying to be kind and became heavy. Breath wanted to skip to we're done. Rachel's tone shifted. Not louder. Closer. That musical timbre that slips past the stubborn parts and tells them to behave. Arthur, she said. Hands soft. Keep the bubble small. Valeria hummed. 2 o'clock. I stepped in, cut, stepped again. No bounce. I didn't punish the air for lying. Let the first law do its job. First touch bites even in crosswind. The lance clanged on something that wasn't steel, my discipline, and skated. Shortest line. My edge moved between 2 marks only I could see, clean and straight. Exit clean. I didn't drag attention behind me like a rag. Glamour shavings spun off and tried to hatch into comforts. Luna's harmony rolled under them and smoothed the need to snatch. The reef stayed a field, not a bed. Reverian finally looked interested. Better, he said. Then take something of mine. The mantle flared. He pressed a story into the half-second between heartbeats. A white-tile kitchen and a girl who never existed laughing at nothing important. It hit true. Want shut a door on my ribs. I didn't try to be stronger than the feeling. I did what Rachel taught until it lived in my bones. In 4. Out 4. I heard her voice as if it sat inside my helmet. Breathe. The pressure didn't vanish. It lost purchase. Arthur, Rose said. 3 degrees left. The true line. Valeria's edge agreed. Now. I cut where she showed. No speed games. No scream. Just to carry through that began before my mind finished saying first. The blade kissed the glamour core behind his smile. The hinge that made the room feel like a room. The kiss became a nick. Not deep. Enough to make the Dominion hiccup. Reverian's head snapped a fraction. First true reaction. He didn't withdraw. He slid forward, cloak fanning, and changed flavor. Ownership. Lust likes to claim. The next whisper wasn't rest. It was mine. The script on my wrist warmed. Reject false sufficiency. Rachel's hymn drew a line along the floor of my mind. The word mine bounced and fell. Contain perimeter, I said. Don't reach in. Copy, Reka said. Cecilia's chuckle ticked in my ear. I'm not that stupid, baby. 3 lances, Serafina warned. Frost bells chimed where they'd land. He threw them in a fan to herd me into the worst place. Overlap where his mood was strongest. Valeria nudged my palm. Do not chase. I won't, I said. I went the other way. People forget the shortest line sometimes includes away when away is the true line between the only 2 marks that matter. The lances crossed where I had been. I was already a step outside their story, coming back in on the exit, not dragging the law, just finishing a messy sentence clean. First real blood, if you could call it that. The mantle tore and night poured out, then stopped. He laughed in my head like ice breaking on a river. Finally, he said, a man who refuses the free meal. Come. Starve with me. He tightened the dominion, focus narrowing to me alone. The perfume of lust licked at the reef and slid off, carrying a taste that wasn't for me at all. A signal going outward. Someone larger would notice later. I noted it and let it pass. Containment lines holding, Reka reported. Warders steady. Bone screens regrowing. No leakage into the yard. Cecilia? I asked. Tangling his timing, not his teeth, she said. Rose? Angles clean. Serafina? Footing true. Rachel? If I say stop, I stop, I finished. Good. Reverian raised both hands. 10 lances grew in an arc space between us, folded into rooms I could live in forever if I was dumb. I grinned inside the helmet. At last, someone on my level. Keep the yard clean, I told my people. This is mine. Valeria purred, edge-hungry and polite. We begin. We begin, I said and stepped into him. Reverian lifted his hands and 10 lances grew. Dark silk drawn into spear points, each one a promise shaped like mercy. They didn't whistle. They arrived early, sliding into the places I would be if I got greedy. I wasn't. First touch bites. Shortest line holds. Exit clean. Valeria nudged my palm. Low, then rise. I dipped the first, skimmed the second on a line thinner than pride, rose through a third that tried to herd me into a corner. No sound. No flare. The reef held true under my harmony. Luna's quiet support made the ground an honest floor in a lying room. Reverian stepped with me, cloak moving like night shaken from a sleeve. His lust gift tightened, not like a wall, like curtains being drawn. Stars above came a finger closer. The regolith under my boots wanted to remember it was a couch. Finish, then rest, I told myself, and the reef echoed the sentence back. He smiled with the feeling of a smile. I can help you finish, he said, and the 10 lances bent mid-flight, curving around each other with the casual grace of habit. 2 aimed at my hip where balance lives. 2 kissed Valeria's edge to taste her name. 6 rode a cage in slow motion and let me see it closing so my mind would sprint to be inside it. Cecilia laughed in my ear and tied 3 of the lance times into a knot. They tripped over their own arrival and came late. Rose folded 2 more arcs into a single angle and moved the angle a thumb width so it never matched me. Serafina's frost bells chimed once. Step here, not there. I obeyed the bell. First touch bit. Second began before the first was done, carry through clean. Third wanted to sing. I kept the song inside the work. Valeria hummed approval. She likes clean. The nearest lance brushed my pauldron and turned the thought of steel into the thought of velvet. My shoulder didn't jolt. It sank. The force that should have traveled down bone and taught the arm a lesson went nowhere. Gift 2. Not a shield. A theft. He didn't block impact. He softened it until the world forgot what a hit was. Reverian tasted the moment I understood. Caress of silence, he said, not boasting, not hiding. Within my hand, everything lands softly, even ends. He walked in and let the gift breathe. My next cut hit a seam in his mantle, perfect aim, perfect line, and sank like a blade into a pillow. The edge still bit, small truth intact, but the promise behind it bled away. The exit went clean because I made it, not because the world helped. Arthur, Rachel said, voice warm and close in the ear, that timbre that presses scattered things into order. Hands soft, breathe on 4s. In 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. I let the breath carry past the frustration. His gift didn't make me weak. It made the room refuse to admit strength existed. Reverian's lances became threads and then cloth, a net that wanted to be a blanket. 100 star moths poured off his cloak, each a door into an easy minute I'd earned 100 times over but had never taken. Tea cooling on a counter, the weight of a book on my chest, laughter from a kitchen with white tile I had no right to remember. Containment, I said. On it, Reka answered. She wrote no indulgence across her other wrist and the script sank into skin with a glow like old iron. Her next step slid through the edge of the dominion, and the edge frayed where her letters touched it. Cecilia tangled moth doors together until they formed a knot that couldn't decide who opened first. "No dinner," she told them flatly. Rose pinched a spill of glamour to a point. "One choice," she said, then broke that too. Serafina set 3 new ice blossoms in a triangle. In vacuum they didn't melt. They marked true footing so eyes and body agreed. Erebus's bone screens budded a second ridge, pale and patient, drinking a creeping sheen of want that tried to travel along the ground like spilled oil. The ridge yellowed, cracked, shed, and grew back clean. Reverian watched all of it and smiled in the way of a man who likes a game with pieces that move. "Polite friends," he said. "I prefer rooms where lovers ask for different songs." "Not your room," I said and went in. No gray, no domain, no cheats, just the laws I paid for in chalk and breath. Arc hook spiral around a lance that pretended to be late and wasn't. 0-inch in vacuum, using harmony anchors in my boots to give me a floor to push against. Flicker palm to turn his lean into a slip without overcommitting. The edge kissed, carried through, left clean. His caress caught the shock and made it gentler than truth. My elbow hit something that refused to be bone and called itself velvet. Power bled out like a sigh. "Better," he said approvingly. "But tired." He pressed gift one harder. Lust not as hunger, but as ownership. "Mine," the whisper said. "My victory. My rest. My idea of you." The script on my wrist warmed. "Reject false sufficiency." Rachel's voice slipped past stubbornness to set a hand on the right part of my mind. "Finish," she said softly. "Then rest." I didn't try to be stronger than the whisper. I let the next in-breath fill the bubble around my hand where law lives. First touch bit because I said it would. Second began before the first ended because I'd written that sentence small and honest over 3 long days. Third wanted to sing. I let it hum. Reverian shifted flavor. The lances became hands. The hands became invitations. The invitations became assumptions. He placed a soft rule on the half-second where a choice starts. It will end here with him. "Valeria?" I asked without moving my mouth. Her reply brushed my skin like the edge of a ribbon. "He steals the sharp. We can make a sharper. Without gray." Tiny, amused note. "You paid for small, clean truths. Use them." I did. The next cut went not for the shoulder, not for the heart. Those were rooms he'd prepared, but for the hinge where his gift translated impact into forgiveness. The caress lived on curves and couldn't quite reach corners. I drew a corner where a curve wanted to be. The edge bit. The carry-through scratched the hinge. A whisper of pressure leaked out and went where it should have gone. Reverian's posture stuttered a breath. Not pain. Surprise. He moved differently, cleaner. High radiant weight opened its eyes. 10 lances became 5 and then 1. He held that single promise like a king holds a scepter and, for a moment, there was no room, no couch, no moth. Just a line aiming at my throat with no lie on it at all. I smiled inside my helmet. Finally. He didn't answer. He arrived. I met him. First touch bit. The rest did not. The caress drank again, and my cut landed as a polite handshake with no opinion attached. I slid away on the shortest line. Exit clean. He followed, cloak flicking starlight. The Dominion breathed with us. Press and relief. Tide and slack. If I made a big play, if I tried to match weight with weight, the room would eat it and burp. "Arthur," Rose said calmly. "His center is drifting 3 degrees right with each honest strike. He's adjusting caress coverage to you. So stop being where he thinks I am." I answered, and let the next step be ugly on purpose. He bit, just a little lance arriving where the pretty footwork said I'd go. My ugly line bought a thumb width. I spent it scratching the hinge again. Valeria purred. "Good." Reverian's unseen smile sharpened. "I enjoy you," he said, and I felt it as a pressure along the back of my neck, the way a hand settles before it becomes a grip. "You refuse comfort with taste." He raised his left hand and changed the fight. Sound died. Not in the yard, Luna's harmony kept our voices clear, but in the space between our edges. The little cues you don't know you listen for, the scrape of foot on grit, the soft hiss of cloth, the tick of a lance point nudging dust, went to sleep. The caress of silence wasn't just for impact. It pressed pillows into the spaces where men time their lives. I missed a cue, late by a quarter heartbeat, and his lance kissed my ribs with a promise. The suit hardened. The harmony anchor held. Still, something in me wanted to let the cut become a touch and the touch become an end. Arthur. Rachel's voice arrived like a metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. I put my feet on her counts. The world woke up enough to be true again. Containment, I asked. Clean, Reka said. No leaks. Bone screens holding, Erebus added. Then I'm changing rules, I said. Silence on the line. The kind that holds disagreement and care. Gray, Rachel asked. Yes. Keep it tight, Luna said. Don't teach the reef bad habits. Small and sharp, Valeria murmured, hungry and polite. Reverian cocked his head, the hint of his smile returning. More rooms? He asked. Bring yours. I had wanted the duel this way, sword only, paid for truths. But his second gift stole endings and made them land soft. If I kept pretending the room was mine, I would spend the night cutting pillows. Thank you, I told him, and meant it, for the lesson. Then I opened a page. Not a blaze, a fold. The wings of eclipse slid from my back like two flat ideas made visible, and the gray crown above my brow spun once. The reef did not shiver. It sighed, as if relieved that the work it had been asked to hold would be finished soon. The Dominion tried to be a room and found itself inside a sentence. Valeria's edge brightened the way a smile brightens a face. Now, she said, delighted. I stepped, and the places I wanted to touch decided they touched. Reverian's lance arrived exactly where it should have mattered, and the world learned, politely, without drama, that it did not. I watched the fight from the bridge of my flagship, a black lattice of glass and song that drank starlight and gave me what I asked for. The moon filled the forward pane. Pale stone. Human wards like a thin gold thread. Bone guns. Too many banners for such a small rock. Boring, usually. Earth is a provincial hinge in a provincial war. I only send archdukes because it amuses me to see what they do with borrowed teeth. But the human with the sword was not provincial. He had not walked the gates. I could tell by the way his breath still lived inside his chest instead of inside the world. And yet he edited. His blade moved and a room obeyed. Page turned where no book was. Insolent. Charming. Name him, I said. Arthur Nightingale. My choir officer answered, fingers moving through a sheet of shadowed light. Human. Mid-radiant. Carries a weapon spirit, Valeria. Commands a Lich King. Surrounded by saints and witches. Unclassified phenomenon present at the edge of his actions. Unclassified. Good. I prefer new toys. Below, Reverian pressed hard and then began to drown. He had poured both of his gifts into this moondust arena. His lust mantle that erases caution, and the older one that teaches a scene to feed off its own heartbeat, and the boy still stood inside clean lines. Then the unclassified thing opened like a quiet door and the duel stopped being honest. Reverian's timing faltered. The humans did not. I let him prove himself. I let the boy prove himself. The moment after proof is where possession is sweetest. Take me through him, I said when I saw Reverian's knees start to forget what they were. One thread. Acolytes set the angle. Our machinery is better than anything these continents can make. It tastes truths that people mistake for air. But this was not the work of steel. This was my hand. I slid a single strand of fantasy through a seam in Reverian's mantle, the seam where desire turns devotional. You can always find it if you taught him the mantle yourself. The thread took. Out there, the regolith remembered carpet. The black sky remembered softness. The heat-bleached suit clinging to Arthur's ribs remembered silk that yields. This is not illusion. Illusion lies to eyes. Fantasy persuades reality to want a different answer. Stay, I suggested gently, voice woven through his air and the Archduke's blood. Set the edge down. Be held. You may rest. For half a heartbeat he believed me. The sword in his hand, Valeria. The name brushed my shoulder like a courteous bow, hummed warning. The healer's count threaded his ear and caught him by the ribs. The ice swordswoman planted a foot in the world and refused to move. The unclassified page in him turned and bit my sentence in two. Interesting. I pressed a little more. Not crude force, why waste a body that is already breaking? I unfolded a hall of soft light over their field, just wide enough to feel like home. Not a throne. A room that forgives. I do not cheapen what I want. He wavered again, right where will and want share a hinge. Space shivered. Old Thunder put teeth around that hinge. She did not arrive in person. The dragon never makes that mistake when one of my kind is fishing. She came through a human gate, dragging law behind her like a net. It hurt her. She did it anyway. Tiamat, I said aloud, letting the bridge hear the bruise in her name. Lysandra, she answered from far away, voice steady only because she chose it to be. Leave him. Earth bores me, I said truthfully as I sharpened the hall around his breath. He does not. Her weight leaned through the Ouroboros line. The human machine groaned. My thread sang. Reverian's spine creaked where my hand and her teeth met. He is not yours, she said. No one is, I said. That is why they are beautiful. I pushed. The boy's suit became drape again. His lungs reached for the soft place I offered. The Lich's ramparts tried to decide they were ivory. The saint's light learned, only for a moment, how to flatter instead of cure. The witch's chaos flirted with my gravity. Even the moon wanted to be polite and lay down. And then Tiamat bit the seam. Not my face. Not the boy's throat. The seam. There is always a seam where a sentence clips to a body. She found it and closed her jaw. Old law. True shape. Pain. The gate screamed like a harp pulled past kindness. Reverian gasped as his mantle took the shock meant for me. My hall fell like a curtain when you pull from a wall you forgot to nail. Stone remembered being stone. Vacuum remembered being vacuum. The boy's hand remembered blade, not ribbon. The unclassified page in him drew a neat line across the last of my words and made them behave. Barely. Delicious. The bridge did not breathe loud. They learn. She is remote. One of my attendants whispered, eyes on the sag in the human gate. You could press. I could break the Archduke into paste and give her the satisfaction of a rescue, I said, amused. Not today. I took inventory while Reverian reeled and the boy reset his shoulders, polite enough not to gloat. Saintess. Witch. Swords. Lich. The ice girl with steel in her quiet. The red-haired chaos smile. The calm one who writes paradox like prayer. Pretty pieces for a small planet. Earth as a whole? Weak. Their machines are toys. Their pylons are polite sticks. Their politics taste like old bread. If the overlord were not busy with the librarian, I would allow a month and a half to break their islands and teach them the mercy of one law. But the great game is elsewhere. This moon rock is a side table in a banquet. The boy is not. Mark him, I said at last. No hooks, no anchors. Learn what he refuses and who he will not leave. Do not touch the unclassified page. If you try, it will cut you and I will laugh. On the field, the duel rolled again toward the end that was always coming. Reverian had courage. He was losing anyway. The sword spirit purred to the boy and he listened. Good. I prefer prey that understands the kindness of obedience and the thrill of disobedience. As he raised his edge to finish my Archduke, I sent one last taste down the line, a whisper that even a dragon couldn't catch. The feeling of a room that knows exactly how to hold without harming. He shivered, then cut. The Archduke fell. Tiamat steadied the screaming gate on her side and, for a breath, let her mask slip. Not fear. Strain. She is not what she was when she ruled a sky of her own. Old divinity leaves scars that talk back when you ask the world to be simple. Later, I told her, honest as ever, when you are not leaning on bones. Not through my skies, she said softly, and set the line to humming instead of tearing. I did not care enough about their moon to argue. Care about him. Signal the 4th and 6th to maintain pressure on the 7 sea lanes. I told the bridge as I rose. Shift the choir toward verdant and salt fronts. Withdraw our eyes from Valdris for now. They will only see what we let them see. And the human? My choir officer asked. Watch, I said, smiling as the forward pane dimmed. He is still only human. That makes him possible. The Velvet Paradox turned its attention back to the deep war. Engines sang. On the pane, the moon kept its truth for now. And somewhere in a quiet room inside a boy with a sword, a small new want began to grow where my hand had almost stroked. Tiamat could stop my touch this once. Barely. Next time I will come through a better door. I don't like underground fights. The air sticks to your throat and the sound comes back at you wrong. But Shadow Seekers love tunnels, so here we are, me, Alastair Creighton, and 6 meters of cold brick under Wintermark. Left, I said. He didn't ask how I knew. God's eyes had already mapped the flicker in the black. I stepped and cut. Air compressed along my blade and the shadow peeled off the pillar like wet paint. It had a face for a heartbeat, long and hungry. Ice took it, and the shape broke into a drift of ash. 2 more, Alastair said behind me, voice even. A tight circle of 9 sigils glowed faintly around his boots. Clean geometry, 9th circle work. He never wastes mana. The tunnel bent. Their leader tried for theater, letting the torches gutter out one by one. The last torch died, and I would have laughed if I were 15. At 15 I'd have applauded. At 20 I'd have burned the corridor down. I'm not 15. 6 elements spun around my wrist in quiet bands. Fire, ice, water, lightning, wind, earth. I let wind move first, a whisper that shifted the dust. Footfall patterns showed themselves. Water bled from the air into a thin film over the flagstones. The Shadow Seeker in front skidded and threw a hand out to catch himself. Now, I said. Alastair's array widened by a palm and laid a pale net across the corridor. Anti-umbric lattice, nothing holy about it, just very competent light and warding. It erased the places Shadow wanted to collect. The Seeker's body made sense in that light. Bones, joints. A human being with a knife who thought dark meant safe. I met him in 3 simple cuts and let the 4th be merciful. The knife rang on stone. He didn't get up. The last one tried to ghost through the wall. I sent frost through the mortar, a neat line that turned into a bar. His shoulder hit it. Lightning met him after, not cruel, just final. Silence came with the clean end of a job done right. My breath fogged once in the cold, then went clear. Alastair walked the bodies without disgust or joy, just a king cataloging what his city will not suffer. He's taller than me by a finger and older by 2 decades and some old wars. The white in his hair suits him. That's the last cell, he said. For this district. For this week, I corrected. We both know how the world breathes. He gave me a look I knew from the old days when I tried to get cute in training. Steady, unimpressed, almost fond. He used to pull me out of bad habits with that look. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it made me worse. We climbed the service stairs into hard light. Wintermark's frost hung from gutter edges. The sun made a fair attempt at pretending it was warm. Creighton banners snapped on high poles, blue and white with the crown drawn, not shouted. We were halfway across the plaza when it hit. At first I thought the light shifted. It wasn't light. It was preference. The world wanted to be a softer thing for a moment. The hair on my arms rose. Every sense tilted. Alastair glanced at me. You feel? Yes, I said. Moonside. He felt it a breath after I named it. Jaw setting like a man hearing an old enemy laugh across a room. 9th circle control pulled tight around him. Sigils dimming to almost nothing as he braced. Divine, I said, and I don't use the word loosely. He closed his eyes once, brief, the way fathers do when fear lines up exactly with memory. Rachel is his even when she's saintess and mine and ours in a dozen complicated ways. She's also her own. If she were here, she'd tell him to breathe. He'd pretend he didn't need the reminder. Arthur? He asked. He's there, I said. Luna, Tiamat, the others. They'll hold. I know, he said. He said it to himself as much as to me. The plaza snapped back into proper proportion. The pressure faded as cleanly as it arrived. Civilians didn't know they'd been brushed by a god's attention. Good. They shouldn't have to. I sent a tight pulse northward. Dia. Sola. They answered from the high tower that always smells faintly of tea. Dia. Felt a nudge. Not ours. Sola. Route's ready if we move a wing to the coast. Hold, I said. Arthur turned the tide. Something very big looked down. Dia. Understood. Sola. Tell the moon to behave. You can tell it yourself when we go up, I said. We walked the perimeter once more. Alastair checked a ward stone with the side of his hand. You sensed first, he said, calibration, not compliment. I'm stronger than you now, I said. No pride, no apology. Measurement. He nodded. Yes. We stood at the top of the steps over Wintermark's river. He doesn't talk unless it matters. Maybe it did now. I was wrong about you, he said at last. I let the wind go around us, not between. You were right then, I said. About the boy I was. And right choosing Arthur. You spared Rachel a job that would have broken her. He exhaled a laugh, small and tired. She'd move the mountain even if it broke her. She will anyway, I said. But with him, it breaks the mountain back. He looked at the pale sky where you can't see the moon in daylight but you know it's there. The lines at his eyes are old. He earned them the hard way. I trained you to stand, he said. And you stand. I can live with that. I trained with you to fight, I said. And you still fight. I can live with that. We don't hug. It would be false. Respect suits us better than forgiveness. A runner jogged up with a bow that didn't waste time. Your Majesties, he said. Easy way to be wrong and right with one word. Final reports. Eastern sublevels clean. Copy shrine torn down. No civilians hurt. Good, Alastair said. Close the schedule. Families back on the street by evening. The runner sprinted off. The plaza began breathing the way cities do when the thing you couldn't name leaves quietly. What do you make of him? Alastair asked. He didn't need to say who. Arthur, I said. He's what the story needed and, more irritatingly, what the world wants. I am second because he exists. Used to annoy me. Now it saves time. He huffed. Honesty from a windward. Mark the date. Ask Rachel, I said. She'll carve it into a pillar. At his daughter's name, his eyes softened, then hit it, then failed to for a heartbeat. I didn't make it worse by pointing. We walked to the training yard behind the hall. The stones still held ghosts of the last session here 10 years ago, when he disarmed me 11 times and told me to stop being clever and start being inevitable. Again? He asked, lifting his blade. I smiled without teeth. Again. We went slow and neat. No element flares, no grand art. Just lines, timing, the way feet talk to stone. He still has timing I respect. I still have eyes that cheat. We worked to the edge of our breath and stopped there. A tremor ran down the sky as we sheathed. Not the divine brush this time. Smaller, closer, the first scouts in a war who think they're ghosts because they cannot imagine dying. The East will cut theirs. The South will smile and burn theirs out of the air. The West will charge a fee and do it anyway. The North? The North will stand and let them come. Move the border watch up, Alastair said. Done, I said. And Dia was answering before I finished. I faced the sky once more in companionable silence. My fiancés keep the North calm. Alastair keeps a continent sober. Arthur shows the world new rules and grins while doing it. I used to think I'd hate that. I don't. I pressed the charm and counted to 8 while Wind curled the yard flags and let them go. Somewhere up there, a demon lord of lust looked down and noticed a human man who isn't a god and intends to be something even gods plan around. Watch me, I told the sky. It didn't answer. It doesn't have to. It will. Reverian's armor finished collapsing in a slow drift of dust, curling away from the crater like ash in no wind. The silence afterward wasn't peace. It was stunned equipment catching up with itself. Cracked gantries ticked. The yard's ward pylons hummed off-key and then found the note again. Tycho's horizon wore a thin silver edge where the sun clipped the black. Tiamat lowered her hand and actually groaned. No theater in it, just an old dragon's bones telling the truth. That, she said, rubbing at her temple, was merely a projection through a dying archduke, and I barely held it. Her mouth twisted. How degenerate I've become. Luna, already stitching pure light through bent conduits like thread through canvas, didn't look up. You held, she said. That's what matters. I kept Valeria's blade down and my breathing even. Gray had already gone quiet, tucked back into its pages, but my pulse hadn't abated yet. Something clung to the yard, perfume you couldn't scrub, heat without temperature. The world still wanted to lean the way she had told it to lean. Lyra glanced over the wreck with steady eyes. Lysandra of the 7th Court, she said, not raising her voice. Divine rank. She shouldn't have been able to reach this far through a mortal anchor. Yet, she cheated, Tiamat muttered. She always did like small doors. Cecilia hooked her thumbs into her belt and let out a short, disbelieving laugh. So the demon lord of lust sticks her hand through our window because she saw our boy swinging a sword and decided she wanted a souvenir? Not a souvenir, Rose said, watching me too closely, mind already solving angles. A possession. Rachel stepped in front of me and lifted my chin with 2 fingers, soft and clinical at once. How much did she touch you? She asked. Her voice had that musical timbre that makes your stubborn parts behave. I meant to say, not much. What came out was a breath that shivered. Valeria pulsed in my grip. One quiet note. Stay with me. She's not here, I told the sword, which was really me telling myself. Not here, Valeria agreed, a whisper against my palm. But she scented you. Tiamat's humor came back in a narrow sliver. Congratulations, second hero. You've managed to attract the attention of the one demon lord guaranteed to make every court gossip sheet in 3 systems explode. Please don't, I said, because the heat under my skin climbed a degree with every word that treated this like a joke. Tiamat's smile died fast. All right, joke's over. Her eyes cut from me to the shattered crater and back. Listen, Arthur. Alisara is a catastrophe you can one day cut. This one, Lysandra, is something you do not touch. She tapped her chest. Not yet. Not soon. Maybe not ever without company. I nodded, but the nod felt like it was happening 2 inches to the left of my skull. Lysandra's aftertaste thickened the air. Want, not pointed at anyone in the room, just want as a law of motion. The kind that makes hands choose and keep choosing. Seraphina stepped to my flank like drawing a familiar shape on the ground. You're red at the ears, she said deadpan. Ice gathered at her fingertips, gentling the air's fever without turning it cruel. Reka wasn't poetic. She slid in on the other side, wrote 3 quick characters across her wrist with a thumbnail, binding script, ugly and effective, and pressed her palm between my shoulder blades. Cursed script bled warmth that wasn't heat into my spine, a leash I agreed to wear. Eyes here, she said low. Don't feed it. I'm not elite. The yard wasn't helping. The crews approached, then stopped, then approached again, faces flushed from more than exertion. Even the Redeemer's lantern light looked warmer than holy. Lysandra's whisper had been fine and surgical. It drifted through the metal like a remembered touch. Luna swore under her breath, wiped sweat that wasn't sweat, and changed tactics. Everyone off the line, she called to the yard. Back to second cordon. Saintus with me. Rachel's halo brightened. Not the full choir, just the hush she carries in her bones. Pure light rolled out in a low tide across the staging floor. Not burning, cleaning. This is not yours, she told the air, and corners of shadow remembered they were corners and not invitations. Better, Luna judged. Keep it low so we don't crack the metal. Cecilia snapped her fingers. 9 circles of witchfire lit, each one bent in ways that would have given an orthodox mage hives. I can fuzz the signal, she said. Chaos on chaos. Bad radio for dirty gods. Rose opened her palm. A blue rose unfurled with a paradox smile, petals folding wrong on purpose. She let its scent spread in a precise counter to the lingering fantasy. Subvert the subversion, she murmured. Give her reflection nowhere to stand. Lyra's gaze remained on me. How strong is it? She asked, and somehow made the question a rope I could hold. Enough, I said honestly. I know it's borrowed. I know it's not mine. I still want. Good, Tiamat said, and I blinked at her. You said the quiet part out loud. That's the part that keeps men from doing stupid things in the name of pretending they aren't men. Speak for yourself, Cecilia said, but the roughness in her voice softened as she shifted closer. Look at me, furnace boy. I looked. Wild crimson danced in her irises, witchcraft and will. She grinned like a dare and bumped my hip with hers. We're right here. Start listing shards in the order you learned them. Out loud. Now? I asked, incredulous. Now, she said. Fine. Gale shard. Ember shard. Stone. My throat ticked. Stone shard. Torrent. Volt. Frost. Axis. Veil. Flux. Good, Rose said quietly. Now name the first time you used each of them correctly. That's cruel, I said. It's grounding, she corrected. And you love us for being cruel when we need to be. She was right. She usually is. Seraphina's cold stole another degree from the room without turning it sharp. Breathe, she said, tapping 4 beats on my wrist with the tip of her pencil. On 4s. Reika's script bled deeper, the characters she had written on herself flaring a heartbeat and then flattening, leaving the leash without the pain. You asked us to be your brakes, she reminded me, voice softer than her words. Let us be. Rachel stood on her toes and pressed her forehead to mine the way she does when she resets hearts. Stay with me, she whispered, pure light braided into the words. Stay. With me. Listening. Valeria breathed in my hand. She dimmed her edge, let herself be just weight and presence, not invitation. The heat didn't vanish. That wouldn't be true. It shifted, forced out of the rails Lysandra had drawn and back into the simple fact of a man who loves 5 women for 5 different reasons and is loved back by them in 5 different languages. Desire without a god's finger on the scale is honest. It becomes choice again. Better? Luna asked, eyes narrowed, working. Better, I said. Sweat cooled at my temples. The horizon stopped pulsing. Tiamat watched the yard breathe out and folded her arms. You keep making jokes about my weakness. I'll swat you, she told Cecilia without heat. Then she looked at me and the iron came back. Hear me, Arthur Nightingale. Lysandra is worse than Alisara by orders that make numbers cry. Do not seek her. Do not answer if she whispers again. If she pulls through a door, you leave the room and let me or Lyra slam it shut. That isn't pride talking. It's arithmetic. I hear you, I said. And you believe me? I thought about the moment her fantasy poured through Reverian like honey through a cracked jar. About how my will felt like it had hands on it that weren't mine. About Tiamat's groan. Dragon Empress. Divine once. Gritting teeth to keep a projection from writing over a piece of our world. Yes, I said. I believe you. Good, she said, and some of the fury left her shoulders. I will get stronger again. Lyra will. You will. But do not pretend today wasn't a close thing. Lyra's gaze flicked toward the black above us, where earth hung like a blue thought you could almost touch. Her attention moves on, she said. For now. Let it, Tiamat said. We have better things to do than preen for a god with bad taste. Cecilia's grin came back. Bad taste? She picked our man. Exactly, Tiamat said dryly. Proving my point. Rachel blinked awake to a ceiling she didn't recognize for half a second. Polished composite, not her dorm canopy. Then remembered. Tycho quarters, post-chaos, post-everything. She stretched on instinct and immediately winced as a bright line of ache lit her lower back. Right. Primal methods. She rolled carefully onto a hip. Arthur was a tangle of limbs and blanket on the far side. Dead to the world. The other 3 were draped over him like smug cats. Rachel scowled. Not really at him, more at the memory of pure light sliding off Lysantra's residue like rain off oil. When sanctity fails, you improvise. It had worked. It had also worked. She cupped a hand over the tender spot and let a faint wash of pure light bloom under her skin. Keep it dim, keep it quiet. Me too, murmured a voice against her stomach. Rachel jumped. Cecil. Shoo, Cecilia whispered, hand already over Rachel's mouth. Crimson eyes very, very awake. Why are you yelling? I wasn't you, Rachel huffed when Cecilia finally moved her hand. She finished the healing burst and leveled a look. Use your own mana. We are radiant rank. Cecilia made a show of considering it. Nope. I want to remember Arthur. You would? Rachel muttered, slipping out from under the covers. She padded toward the ensuite, pausing only to make sure the glow from her hand died before it could wake anyone. Cecilia wobbled after her, posture dramatic, which tickled something protective and irrational in Rachel's chest. How are you always annoying? The Saintess said without heat. It's a gift, Saintess, Cecilia smirked, detouring toward the jacuzzi. I'm using the shower, Rachel said, already turning the tap. Steam feathered up the glass. Fine, I'm taking the jacuzzi, Cecilia replied, twisting the valve. The sunken tub roared to life and filled fast with perfectly warm water. She sank down to her shoulders, eyes half-lidded, a satisfied hiss leaving her throat. Ow! Worth it. Rachel stepped under the shower. Hot water drummed tension out of her spine. 10 minutes later she was in soft cotton, hair braided, dotting a hint of color on her lips when Cecilia emerged in loose sleepwear, steam-damp hair curled behind her ears. Lipstick? Really? Cecilia clicked her tongue. You're a saintess. Modern times, Rachel said, deadpan. Before a saintess, I'm a woman. Cecilia squinted at her. I thought there was a clause in your vows about eschewing material desires. Luckily, we're not living in parchment, Rachel said, capping the tube. And yes, you're wearing liner, so don't start. First good thing you've said today, Cecilia conceded, snagging toothpaste. They eased the suite door closed behind them and slipped into the living room. The Luna base's morning cycle had clicked on. Pale light spilled across low couches and the long table, the hum of sealed habitat walls steady after last night. Earth hung outside the viewport like a coin on velvet. Rachel set water to boil, opened her northern blend, tea flecked with gold leaf, and breathed in calm. Cecilia flopped into a chair, stretched like a cat, and immediately ruined the calm. How charming does he have to be to pull a literal god? Rachel's mouth flattened over the cup. Did you have to bring that up? I'm serious. Cecilia started counting on her fingers. There's us 5 all radiant. 2 princesses. 1 princess who is also the saintess. 1 duke's daughter. 1 terrifying commoner with murder handwriting. Alisara Velcroix, technically the strongest human alive, is obsessed with him because of Emma. And now the demon lord of lust. Rachel didn't answer. Her eyes did deep blue with that little buried ring of gold. Storm thinking before speaking. She poured. You forgot one. Cecilia sat up. Who? Luna. The Chelan. Cecilia frowned, replaying memory. Luna laughing off the idea with a shake of amethyst hair. She made fun of it. She did. Rachel agreed, stirring. But she looks at him with old eyes. Cecilia groaned into her hands. At this rate he'll attract Akasha herself. Don't jinx it, Rachel warned, half serious. The suite door hissed. Serafina stepped in, hair damp, uniform neat despite the hour, bringing that clean, winter air she always carried. She took in the tea, the not speaking, and arched a brow. Is this the part where we list every cosmic being our fiancé has accidentally charmed? She asked, voice like a cold stream. Yes, Cecilia said immediately. Serafina poured water, sat with posture exact. Then add half the ward engineers, she said. Statistically. Rachel nearly spit tea. Serafina. What? They blush. Serafina sipped, unblinking. Also, they filed 3 separate requests to observe his drills. I denied 2. The door hissed again. Rose drifted in with a tablet under her arm, blue roses stitched subtle into her cuff. She set the tablet face down and exhaled. Residual glamour in the hall is under 9%, she reported, sliding into the arm of Rachel's chair. Luna and I anchored a counterpattern. It will fade. We're not talking about the hall, Cecilia said. I know, Rose said dryly. We're talking about him. And the wake. Reka arrived last, loose knot, t-shirt, sweats, the quiet of a sheathed blade. She leaned in the doorway, listened for 5 heartbeats, and cut in. Ground rules, she said. Cecilia perked up. Ooh, house rules. Go on. Reka ticked them off on neat fingers. 1. If a projection pings the room, no one engages alone. Her gaze flicked to Rachel. 2. Interrupter is Rachel or Luna. If pure light fails, we use blunt solutions without shame. Primal methods, Cecilia said, almost solemn. 3. Reka went on, completely unbothered. Remove Arthur from windows. Put him in a room with us. Locks if necessary. Rose's mouth quirked. 4. I file a standing writ. Arthur does not accept gifts or audiences from anyone with antlers, star crowns, inexplicable silk, or a voice described as honeyed, without 5 signatures. That's not how law works, Rachel said. It will by lunch, Rose replied, already unlocking her tablet. Serafina tapped a quiet rhythm on her knee. 5 training. Sword today. No gray. He owes the moon careful work. Cecilia slouched farther into the chair, satisfied. Also, I move we forbid him from smiling at gods. It's clearly lethal. Seconded, Serafina said, perfectly straight. They settled there, the good quiet, alive and making plans because planning stops the shake. Rachel poured another cup. Cecilia accepted hers with a sigh and propped her feet on the low table. Rachel nudged them off. Cecilia put them back. Rachel nudged them off again without looking. Outside, a maintenance crawler trundled along the yard's edge. Inside, 5 women who could move armies discussed pantry inventory and war tolerances because breakfast and baselines are how you keep empires standing. So, Cecilia glanced at the corridor. Do we talk about how Saintis Pure Light didn't fix him? Because we had to. Primal methods, Rachel said, cheeks pinking. Yes, it worked. We're not pretending it didn't happen. It worked because it was us, Serafina said. Anchors he chose, not invasive force. Rose nodded. Identity overrides glamour when the identity is reinforced by emphasis. Say sex, Rose? Cecilia said, wicked. Rose didn't blink. Emphasis. Reka rubbed her thumb over the scar on her wrist where script loved to sit. Bottom line. Next time a divine projection threads the room, we drag him away, lock the door, and distract until Rachel says, clear. Add a physical layer, Serafina said. I'll put an ice array in the corridor. Slows approach without shattering equipment. I'll add a paradox veer. Rose flicked through screens. Any glamour vector gets a 3-degree bend into a dead loop. I'll carve 2 quick scripts on the interior frame, Reka said. Minimal ink. Temporary lock under the ward mesh. Captain Viware won't complain. See? Rachel asked. Cecilia blew her bangs up. Chaos lace woven into the suite's threshold. If anything tries to push emotion over baseline in here, it misfires into static. You'll feel it like hairs rising. Good, Rachel said, musical timbre settling the room. And we do not go looking for attention. The 7 will do diplomacy. We cover him. Serafina added, softer. Tiamat called herself weak for barely holding a projection. Rose's eyes dipped. That is not a sentence I enjoy hearing. Cecilia slanted a smile to crack the weight. Look on the bright side. If gods keep tossing themselves at him, we get priority tea rations. Cecilia, Rachel warned. What? I'm coping. The kitchenette chime popped. Rachel stood, poured, returned, passed cups down the line like communion. When she reached the last, the bedroom door hissed. Arthur stepped into the living room, hair a stubborn mess, t-shirt crooked, Valeria an honest weight at his hip. He paused at the five of them clustered in morning light and visibly considered retreat. He didn't have time. 5 sets of eyes leveled at him. Saintess steady, which amused and dangerous, swordswoman cool as winter, paradoxist unreadable, scripter unimpressed. Arthur froze halfway to a guilty smile. "Good morning," he tried. No one answered. He lifted his hands. "Tea." Silence. Valeria hummed against his palm. A small, feminine warning he felt more than heard. "Behave." Arthur stood there, caught like a kid at the cookie jar, while all 5 kept right on glaring at him. I didn't run. That would have made it worse. I lifted both hands, palms open, and tried a smile that said I knew I was in trouble and was prepared to suffer bravely. "Tea," I offered. "Sit," Rachel said. Warm tone that makes the world behave. I sat. Valeria settled at my hip with a quiet, pleased weight. A faint hum brushed the bone of my wrist. Approval for choosing surrender over sarcasm. "Wise," she whispered along the steel. Not sound so much as certainty. Cecilia swung onto the arm of my chair like she owned the furniture and me by extension. "Item 1, she said. "If a literal goddess tries to flirt through a dying demon again, you do not make eye contact." "I didn't," I started. "You did," all 5 said. "I did," I admitted. Hard to miss. Serafina eased onto the couch opposite. Posture perfect. Glacier calm. "Second," she said. "We treat charms and projections like ambushes. Call it out. Anchor fast. No one takes it alone." "Agreed," I said, and meant it. Rose folded beside Rachel, tablet on her knees. "Third, you do not accept boons, blessings, or marks without prior review." She tapped the screen. "I have a form. 6 signatures. Yours occasionally counts." "That's a joke," I said. "It isn't," Rose said, perfectly serious. Reka leaned against the wall, hair in a loose knot, arms crossed like a kept promise. "Fourth," she said. "You don't carry all this solo. Moon, Earth, 7 politics, demons, Alisara, we divide loads, assign roles, and put guards on your blind spots." "I don't have a martyr complex," I said, reflexive as breathing. Said Rachel, which landed harder than a sermon. Cecilia squeezed my shoulder, crimson eyes bright with chaos. "Fifth, you are ours. We are yours. Say it out loud so your brain hears it." I breathed once. "I'm yours," I said. "You're mine." Rachel's mouth softened. Serafina's shoulders loosened a fraction. Rose's eyes warmed. Reka's nod was a whole sentence. Cecilia stamped the declaration with a quick kiss to my cheek. "Good," she said. "Now smaller business. Make us breakfast." Finally, a fight I could win. The galley was narrow, honest, and stocked like Reka had bullied logistics into doing it right. I cracked eggs. Valeria hummed domestic approval. Rachel put water on for Northern Tea gold-flecked blend from home, because ritual calms her hands. Cecilia filched fruit with the shameless grace of a practiced thief. Serafina laid plates like a ceremony, edges aligned to invisible lines only she sees. Rose found a single packet of her favorite jam, smiled like a secret, and it hurt me in a good way. Reka watched the door and me in alternating beats, the steady metronome of the room. We carried everything to the table. Cups warm, steam rising. The habitat's morning cycle throwing pale light across us and the viewport's slow-turning earth. "Luna," Rachel said, once the first sips were in. "We should speak of her now." The room went careful, not tense. "I like her," I said. "No dance. As a person. As a woman." Cecilia made an offended little sound, then sighed like a queen signing a treaty. "Of course you do." Rachel's blue eyes, with that small, buried gold, searched my face. Her voice came warm. "Sure. Thank you for saying it plain." Rose set her cup down. "Then we set boundaries now so no one bleeds from logistics later," she said. If, when you two choose to explore that, we agree on terms first. Time, truth, care. Cecilia rubbed her temples. Fine. I'll be the villain and say the obvious. If she hurts you, I light her shrine on fire. She doesn't have a shrine, I said. I'll build one, Cecilia said sweetly, and then light it on fire. Reika's mouth twitched. We're not voting on Luna today. We're voting on honesty. He passed. Table the rest until the moon stops smelling like demon. Tabled, Serafina said, neat as a gavel. We ate. It helped. Breakfast always drags the world back toward ordinary. When plates were pushed back and Rachel had bullied the teapot into staying hot, the room turned serious again on its own. Lysandra, Serafina said. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Divine rank, Rose said quietly. Projection only, and Tiamat barely held her. Cecilia drummed fingers. I hate that sentence. Reika nodded. So we don't touch her. Not anytime soon. I know, I said. I'm not suicidal. Debatable, Cecilia murmured. But there was no bite. Rachel reached across and laced our fingers. You need to grow, Arthur, she said. Weather, not judgment. Sword work. Keep walking it clean. Body, sleep. Food. Cadence. Mind. Learn from Lyra without giving away the pieces she shouldn't see. And when you need an anchor, you call us. I will, I said. I'll run the numbers, Serafina added. Clocks, tolerances, drift. If we ever aim you at a god, we do it with math. I'll handle the paper world, Rose said. Concord clauses, 7 schedules, jurisdictional nonsense. If someone tries to tie you down with silk, I cut silk. Reika handles the knives, Cecilia said brightly. And I make the fireworks. Perfect ecosystem. They all looked at me then. The plan was me. I hear you, I said. But before the divine problem, before a god with a crown of lust, I want Alisara. On Earth. The temperature in the room dipped half a degree. Not fear, focus. She's the most dangerous human alive, Rose said. Besides you. And she's killing to get stronger, Serafina said. She will come for us or for those under us. She already took Lyra's brother, I said. I keep seeing his eyes when I try to sleep. Rachel's head tipped, just slightly. You want to go now? I want to prepare now, I said. We still have to close this loop, yard safety, reports, crews. Then I want a week. Training, coordination with Lyra, real air in Valdris. After that, we go hunting. Reika finished, tone like a drawn line. We pick the ground. No stage. No audience. Cecilia's smile was all teeth. I'll write something fun. Rose's eyes turned very calm. I'll write something legal. Serafina tapped a precise rhythm on the table. I'll sharpen. Rachel's thumb traced a slow warm circle on my palm. I'll keep you alive. Valeria purred under my skin. And I? She asked, edged like a kiss. You are perfect, I thought back. True, she answered, pleased. A chime sounded at the door. Ian's voice came soft over the local. Tycho Control wants you on the yard in 20. Crater stable, dead zones shrinking. Luna will meet you at the rim. Cecilia's eyebrows arched. Oh? Will she now? Be kind, Rachel said, but her lips curved. We stood. Habit made each of them touch me on the way out. Small, ordinary claims that always felt like shields and blessings both. Serafina fixed my collar, fingers cool. Stand straight. Rose slid a folded slip into my pocket. This is the schedule you're pretending you don't need. Reika knelt to tie my boot because she knows I forget when I'm thinking about gods. Keep your center, she said. Cecilia poked my sternum. I get the first kiss after the inspection. Rachel caught my gaze. The warm frequency of her voice smoothed the last sharp edge in me. Breathe steady, she said. Not fours, just steady. It landed better. I breathed steady. The suite door hissed open. Earth hung huge in the viewport like a promise we still owed. We stepped into bright lunar morning as a unit. 5 fierce women and 1 very careful man walking toward work. We passed the med bay. Rachel paused to give 2 quick notes to a tired tech and made him smile for the first time in hours. We crossed the main spine. Cecilia palmed 3 snacks for later and winked at a guard who nearly dropped his spear. Serafina checked an instrument at a junction and recalibrated it by feel. Rose exchanged 3 words with a Concord engineer and changed their afternoon. Reka caught a loose strap on a forklift and fixed it without breaking stride. At the airlock, Luna waited. Amethyst hair braided, golden eyes bright, suit helmet under her arm. She took us in, read the room and offered me a short, simple nod that meant later. Thank you. We cycled out. The yard spread like a silver wound turning clean. Crater rim chalked by engineers, Redeemer pylons breathing their quiet light. A dozen teams making a precise, dull miracle of repair. Work first. Alisara later. Lysandra much later. Our work on the moon was done, for now. We left Tycho with crews in steady rhythms. Redeemer pylons breathing their quiet light, and the crater's bad hum down to background noise. On the warp back to Valdris, I kept my eyes open and my hands still. It's easy to call a job finished and miss the piece that bites you later. Nothing bit good. By the time I hit Ouroboros HQ, Elias already had the preliminary budget model spinning above the long table. So this is why you've been hoarding every spare coin, he said, eyes flicking through columns and projections. Yes, I said, because this is going to eat them all and ask for dessert. He grinned despite himself. If it works, it's worth it. It has to work, I said and brought up the second hologram. Not a pretty base. A stubborn one. 3 rings. Inner, middle, outer. Everything else hangs off those. Inner ring is the spine, I said. Pressurized caverns we already own under Tycho, expanded and hardened. Medical, power, command, life support, food, quarters, workshops. If you cut us in half, this is the half that survives and grows back. Elias zoomed the model and whistled softly. You want triple redundancy on life support? I want quintuple, I said. But I'll take triple with a manual bypass Rachel can teach a child. Power stays mixed. Etherite cores, solar farms on the rim, and a crankable backup that looks stupid until it saves lives. Noted, he said, already typing. Middle ring is the shield, I went on. Ward lattice keyed to human biometrics and allied signatures. No fancy tricks. It blocks, it bleeds pressure, it shrugs off corrosion. Redeemer obelisks at 13 points, not 12. Rachel's numbers hold better that way. Him cannons in bunkers, muzzle discipline strict. The lattice ties into early warning arrays on the far side and the poles. If a hole tries to open where it shouldn't, the floor says no. And the outer ring? Elias asked, though he'd already guessed. Teeth, I said. Point defense, interceptor bays, bone and steel. We anchor 4 launch wells for emergency evac and 4 for rapid response. We seed dust anchors around Tycho's lip, Old World iron, New World song. So the ground itself resists being rewritten. We establish a perimeter minefield keyed to miasma density, not motion. Demons will learn the pattern, but they'll bleed learning it. He nodded slowly. And garrison? Rotating, I said. Mixed continental units under one doctrine. Redeemers, ward engineers, medcorps, a flight wing, and a small standing cohort that belongs to the moon and no one else. Erebus can hold a gate 2 steps away, on call, not camping. Luna? He asked. She's offered to seed pure light anchors at the poles, I said. We take that help and write our parts so we don't lean on it. Elias pushed the model wider. Funding. Ouroboros carries the spine, I said. The 5 continents cover the shield as a shared cost. The 7 give us materials and patterns in kind. No secrets we haven't already signed for. I tapped a smaller diagram. 7 names around a circle. Oversight board of 7, South Vizirian. North, Windward/Creighton Joint Seat. West, Ashbluff. East, Mount Hua/Kagu Joint Seat. Central, Slatemark. 1 seat for the Concord Lyra's Choice, and 1 for Ouroboros to keep the ledger honest. He smiled. And you call it? Silver Bastion, I said. Everyone else will call it The moon, and that's fine. But the paperwork needs a spine. He didn't argue. Coordination. You, I said, pick a project head as our face. You keep your hands on the rails. If a noble cousin tries to slide a cousin into logistics, you eject them from an airlock metaphorically and send me a note. He bowed a little, half-mocking, half-earnest. Understood, Guild Grandmaster. He turned serious again. Timelines? Spine first, I said. No point in teeth if the heart starves. Ward Lattice Phase 1 in 6 weeks. Teeth come online as the shield hardens. We don't race the demons. We build so we don't have to. Suppliers. South gives steel and discipline. North gives flight and cold weather solutions. West brings fast-build modules and stubborn people. East brings craftsmen who make wards behave. Central brings money and lawyers and trains that run. The Concord sends what they promised. Proofed pylons, wind and light shears, and 3 pages of math Serafina already framed. He laughed. You make it sound simple. It's not, I said. That's why you're here. He closed the windows with a flick. All right, I'll draft the call-outs and start making enemies. Anything else? 2 things, I said. 1, no hero plaques. We don't gild hallways while welders are still on ladders. 2, write me a room in the spine with a door that sticks a little so I remember what we're building for. I'll make sure the door sticks, he said, and the corner of his mouth tugged up. I'll also make sure it opens. He left the room at a clip that says the hard part is the fun part. I watched the empty doorway for a breath, then let my shoulders down. Valeria made the tiniest vibration against my ribs. This is good, she said, not words so much as approval shaped like one. We'll need you, I murmured. A lot. I know, she answered, pleased. A small knock. Not HQ knock. Home knock. Stella slipped in like a conspirator. A slate clutched to her chest and a braid that never stays put already trying to escape. Daddy, she said, and the room changed shape around the word. Are we making the moon into a castle? A stubborn one, I said, opening my arms. She barreled into me and hugged like she meant it. Show me what you brought. She bounced onto the chair beside mine and woke her slate. A clean diagram lit up, hand lines and neat numbers. 3 circles with dots on each, angles marked, arrows between. I made a coverage plan for the middle ring, she said in a rush. If each Redeemer obelisk radiates safe field to distance d, but interference eats 10% when 2 fields overlap by more than 60 degrees, then 13 points give the fewest thin spots if you arrange them in this pattern. She showed me 13-point circle, offset in a way that made sense the second she drew it. Why 13? I asked to make her explain it out loud. Because 12 is pretty but wrong, she said, very serious. 13 lets you stagger the overlaps so the hungry places can't form triangles big enough to chew through. Aunt Sarah said the same thing with bigger words. She did? I said, ruffling her hair. You two make an alarming team. She preened. Then her mouth turned thoughtful. Can we make a park? A park, I echoed, amused. In the spine, she said. Tiny. Not silly. With a tree that grows in dust and a place to sit and a wall with circles on it for kids to touch, so they know the moon is theirs too. I was quiet for a second. Yes, I said. We can make a park. Good, she said, satisfied. Then people won't be scared when they have to live there. You think about the important parts, I said. I think about what makes my stomach untie, she said primly, then slid the slate to another page. Also, I made a name list and a flag. Silver Bastion is best, but Moon Pancake is funny, and Aunt Cece said we should have funny options to make meetings shorter. I choked. We'll, table Moon Pancake for now. She nodded in grave agreement. Also, I wrote a schedule for the doors. The doors? I asked, already smiling. So they stick a little, she said. Not too much, just enough to remember to be patient. I leaned back and let myself enjoy the exact weight of the moment. A war room full of plans, a child with a slate and a brain that scared grown men, and a future that needed us to be boring and brave at the same time. Want to see the moon again? I asked. Real one, not the model. She shook her head hard enough to threaten the braid. No. Right now I want to see Aunt Rachel because she promised to teach me how to not burn tea. That's a noble art, I said solemnly. We'll put it on the crest. She hopped down, then paused and looked back up at me. You're not going to go fight Alisara today, right? Not today, I said. Today I make phone calls until people say yes and we pay welders. Good, she said, because you promised to help me make the park map and also to breathe steady. I did, I said, and meant both halves. She darted out, calling something about triangles over her shoulder. The room felt quieter and warmer after. I pulled the model back up and tagged 3 more items for Elias before I could talk myself into adding 10. My slate buzzed twice. Reka confirming a security roster that made me feel calmer. Rose attaching a clause that would keep VIPs from wandering into the wrong hallway and getting themselves added to a memorial. I was sketching the outline of the park, small, honest, with a wall kids could touch, when the air on my left bent. It didn't crack or flash. It was the clean kind of magic that looks like a page turning. The temperature dipped a degree. The scent of old storms and warmer seas slid into the room like memory. Space folded and a woman stepped through. Tiamat wore no crown and didn't need one. Dark hair, eyes that had seen empires and were more interested in whether your tea was good. Posture that made rooms choose to stand up straighter. She let the fold close behind her with no fuss. Arthur, she said. Tiamat, I answered, moving to clear a chair that would be beneath her and then deciding she would ignore furniture anyway. She looked once at the hovering rings. Spine, shield, teeth, and the smallest quirk touched the corner of her mouth. Approval earned, not given. Then her gaze found me. We need to talk, she said, and the room remembered what the word war feels like. Where is the small one? Tiamat asked, eyes skimming past the maps. The one who solves triangles and orders men to breathe. Stealing tea lessons, I said, already reaching for my slate. I'll ping her. I didn't have to. The door hissed and Stella slid in on socks, braid escaping, cheeks bright. Aunt Rachel says boiling isn't cooking, she announced, and then noticed the Dragon Empress and froze. Tiamat's shoulders set down a fraction. She crouched, slow, so the world could catch up, and held out both hands like she was greeting a shy bird. Come, little architect, she said. Stella went because children who know wolves also know when they're safe. Tiamat read her at a glance. Scuffed knee, ink on fingers, attention like a blade, and something in her face softened in a way courts never see. I brought you something, she said, and traced a small circle in the air. Wind and light knit themselves into a tiny dragon no longer than my hand. Paper-thin planes of silver blue, folded like 1,000 gentle decisions. It blinked, bowed to Stella, and hovered. Stella's mouth dropped open. Can I? It knows 3 tricks, Tiamat said. It chases the light you make with a finger. It sleeps in a pocket. And if you are afraid in the dark, it will hum the sound of a calm sea until you remember your breath. Stella lifted a finger. The little wormling flowed after it, looping tight spirals, a bell's whisper following. Then it settled on her knuckle, light as a thought. What's its name? She whispered. It waits for you to give it one. Pebble, Stella decided with the certainty of queens. Pebble trilled, folded into a coin of light, and slipped into her pocket. Thank you, Stella said solemnly, then threw her arms around Tiamat's neck without asking. Tiamat stilled, battlefield statue surprised by spring, and then carefully returned the hug. A long breath left her. When she released, she set a palm on Stella's hair. Tell me if any door sticks too much. I will, Stella promised. She shot me a conspirator's glance. Daddy, I'm going to show Aunt Sarah. She'll build a clock for Pebble. Go, I said. Don't teach it to bite. Stella zipped out, braid flying, already explaining trajectories to someone who wasn't there. The room settled. The warmth Tiamat had let in cooled a degree. She rose, and the air remembered why the word Empress exists. When she turned back to me, The softness was gone. What remained was iron kindness and something older underneath. "I did not come for plans," she said. "I came to pay a debt." She reached into, not a pocket, somewhere quieter. When her hand returned, she held a core the size of a man's heart, condensed into crystal that drank the light and gave it back in slow, deep pulses. It was not red. It was forged gold at dusk, veined with storm-dark blue. Heat rolled from it, sun on stone warm, and the scent was thunder before rain. It beat against my ribs in a rhythm that made my own heart remember it was small. I didn't need to ask, but I did anyway. "What is it?" "The heart core of my husband," she said. "Vaelrith Dawnscale, second strongest of our kind. He stood one step from the last gate when the Overlord came. This is what the world could not take." She flipped it once, casual like an apple, and I stepped in on instinct. It didn't thud. Gravity compromised for a breath, and it settled into my palms with authority, heavy without cruelty. I set it on the table because holding it felt like presumption. It pulsed once, and the room seemed to breathe with it. "You gave me Bahamut's heart once," I said, because memory rose with the heat. "It taught me the 8th and 9th circles when I barely had the hands for them. It made my spine carry weight it had no right to carry." Her mouth moved, almost a smile and not. "Bahamut was a teacher. Vaelrith was a storm. You need both." I waited for instructions, for cautions about binding, for talk of channels and timings. She didn't offer them. She didn't explain the how at all. "You need it to get stronger," she said simply. "That is enough. Do not ask me for the recipe. You will listen to the women who keep you honest, and you will not be clever where you should be patient." "Understood." Valeria lay quiet against my hip. No hum, no quip. Not jealousy. Respect, and the hush we give church bells. Tiamat looked at the core, not at me. No tears. Tears would have been smaller than this. "I thought to keep it for some last weapon," she admitted, voice even. "He would spit in my shadow if I did. He was not kind." A beat. "He will like you anyway." We stood with it between us. The heart that wasn't a heart anymore. The base plans turned face down. The toy in a pocket 2 rooms away, humming the sound of a calm sea. "You saved us yesterday," I said, "even if it was barely by your standards." "I barely held a hand through a window," she said, an ugly flicker crossing her mouth and gone. "Do not praise me for that. Praise me when the window shatters on her face." "You will," I said. "We will." She set her palm on the core once more. The golden blue veins answered her with a slow, private glow, then quieted. She lifted her hand like it cost her to touch him. "Arthur," she said, and my name was a stone set where it would carry. "If you find a way to do this that doesn't feed on his memory, choose that way. If not, take what he offers with clean hands." "As clean as I can make them," I said. "And when I start, I'll ask the Viserians and the Concord to stand in the circle. Your people should hear the song he left." Something behind her eyes shifted at people, not grief exactly. A remembering that refused to be only pain. She glanced toward the door where Stella had gone, as if she could still hear Pebble's quiet hum, and a small, human smile returned. "Tell the little architect that when she loses a tooth, Pebble will learn another trick," she said. "Bribery makes good engineers. She'll design an extraction device by dinner," I said. "Good." For a heartbeat, she was simply an aunt who remembered a toy. The fold rose behind her like a page deciding to turn. She didn't offer a hand or a nod. She didn't need to. The room had already decided to stand up straighter when she walked through it. "Thank you," I said, "not only for the heart, for the trust, for the grief shared without spectacle, for bending down so the world could be gentle to a girl with triangles on a slate." Tiamat's eyes met mine. "Old storms, warmer seas. Make him proud," she said, and stepped into the calm between places. The dragon heart sat heavy in my palm. Not crude weight, gravity had nothing to do with it. This was the heaviness of a life that had pressed against the ceiling of the world and almost broken through. I let my breath out slow and, for a blink, the room fell away. The gates were there again. Platinum silver, austere, patient. They didn't glow. They didn't speak. They just existed the way a mountain exists, indifferent to want. The gates of transcendence. The seam between mid and high radiant. The seam my master had crossed with less muscle than I have now, and more being than I can yet carry. Not yet, I told them, and they did what they always do. They waited. I opened my eyes to Avalon's light. Clean, modern. A touch of warm gold that the slate-mark architects favored. The heart still pulsed faintly in my hand. Vaelritha's, Tiamat had said. Her husband, second strongest of their kind, close enough to divine that the sky must have felt thinner when he flew. Bahamut's heart had changed me once. Taught my mind how to stack circles in a way that fit my hands, carved pathways for 8 and 9 circle casting that no book could have given me. If the older heart had shaped my methods, maybe Vaelritha's would sharpen the part of me that refuses to be anything but a sword. Staring won't open it, Valeria murmured from the sheath, voice a soft scrape of steel on silk. I know. I turned the heart once, twice. Felt like an oath. But it might tell me where to knock. She went quiet again. She approves of a small number of sentences per day. Time is the problem. Not if I'll reach high radiant, but when matters now. The demons have started picking at the moon. Alisara is no longer chasing power. She's wearing it. Every delay buys our enemies more minutes to thread their needles. Fine. If the sky wants a price, I'll pay it while I do the job. I set the heart in a warded bowl, sealed it with a simple twist of intent, and pinged the world. Not tech. Not a comm grid. A Concord attunement we built the hard way, legal, magical, social. 5 continents, 5 houses, 1 message braided into the same ribbon. Join now. Planning session. Luna base expansion. Full coverage. Faces came in by presence and permission, not by screen. The Viserion pair from the south. Lyralii in a work coat. Marcus in an old field shirt with the sleeves rolled. Both of them radiating the quiet you want in people with crowns. From the north, Lucifer and Alastair in a shared frame, unbothered by the old friction between them because larger things exist now. From the west, Callie and Jean, badges on, dust-free, ready to turn a map into trucks and trucks into reality. From the east, Master Hyojin of Mount Hua beside Rinkagu, ice and iron in one box. From central, Empress Regent Octavia's proxy, a crisp woman from her office, and Elias, my guild's right hand, already holding a slate and 3 contingencies. Lyra stood with Tiamat, a half-step behind the Viserions out of courtesy, not rank. She gave me the smallest nod. Ready. Thank you, I said. Purpose. Luna Base isn't a research outpost anymore. It's the shield Earth deserves. We expand from Tycho Yard to full coverage. No grandstanding. No monuments. A working moon. No one asked why. We all saw Reverion's body used like a letter opener. We all felt the echo of Lysantra's hand. I laid the plan in clean layers so no one would pretend not to understand. Layer 1. Bastions, I said, marking 4 points in light, 2 polar, 2 equatorial, each sitting on solid bedrock. Fixed anchors with ward choirs, Redeemer sanctums, and quick deploy shelters. Southern Guard and Mount Hua provide anchor crews to rotate with ours. Goal. If a hole is punched anywhere, the nearest bastion catches the blow and keeps civilians alive. Accepted, Lyralii said, no ceremony. Marcus followed with the same word. Mount Hua will assign seniors who don't panic, Hyojin added. Ren's mouth ticked. That's as close as he gets to a smile. Layer 2. The Aegis mesh. I drew a thin web across the whole moon. Not the world pylons, we're not trying to control the void. This is a net of refusals, light, wind, and song that makes hostile teleportation and charm-bearing projections slip. Lyra, your people's harmonics are the spine. Rachel writes the med protocol for choir fatigue and failure. Lyra's eyes warmed a fraction. We will share true timestamps for drift. Medical accepts, Rachel said from just outside my visual field. I didn't need to see her to hear the timbre that makes nervous things behave. Redeemer Sanctums will be staffed by my choosing. Layer 3, Bone Lanes, I said, and let Erebus Shadow lengthen just enough to be polite. Redeemer Transport Corridors and Ossuary Guns. Our undead don't scare civilians. They set honest perimeters and move the wounded fast. West handles the living logistics on top. Sand, food, fuel, bolts, blankets. Callie's grin could cut rope. You'll get your trucks, boss. Jean only said, we'll need 3 extra cold rooms. Demons rot differently. It was practical, not cruel. Layer 4, Paradox Scrim. I looked to Rose. This is yours. No theater. Just a thin fog that makes enemy targeting sloppy. They aim at what was there, not what is. Rose nodded once. A narrow writ with a hard stop. It will not tangle our med lines. Layer 5, Air Corridors and Orbital Lanes. Ian lifted a hand before I said his name. You and Lucifer own the sky between Earth and the Moon. North's Dia and Seola run backup lanes when you sleep. Lucifer's answer was a single done. It meant hours of work he wouldn't complain about. Layer 6, Security Doctrine, I said, and turned my head slightly. Reika didn't smile either. She doesn't need to. No heroes alone. Tag drones only. Any untagged eye over the ridge is dropped. If a god sticks a finger through a window, we do not engage alone. Copy, Reika said. Rules written in plain words. Everyone signs. The Etherite Yard becomes a fortress without looking like a fortress. I finished. We keep extraction going. We don't make a shrine that invites a siege. Empress Octavia's proxy cleared her throat delicately. Authority. Shared. I said. A panel of 7 over Luna Base for this phase, 1 seat each continent, 1 for the 7, 1 for Ouroboros. We vote on policy, not panic. Day-to-day command sits with the lunar commander. Elias, you'll appoint. You still answer to me. Elias' pen didn't slow. Understood. We went around the circle once for friction points. North wanted lane priority in polar storms. The East wanted the ward choirs trained to mount Hua Breath. Nada borrowed him. The West wanted a warehouse layout that didn't smell like nobles. The South wanted the mesh to trip a quiet bell without waking the whole moon. Central wanted budget and audit clause no one could wriggle out of. All of it was fixable. Timeline, Lyralii asked. First bastion in 7 days, Elias said before I could. He knows when to speak for me. Second at 12. Mesh starts in the gaps and works inward. Bone lanes as fast as redeemers can raise gates without making children cry. No one laughed at the phrasing. It mattered now how we felt doing this. Your seat, Marcus asked me. On the ground, I said. Avalon when I need to sign. Tycho when I need to lift. Between them when I need to carry. Tiamat's voice came soft from Lyra's side. And your training? I exhaled. Between breaths. I won't chase the gate by breaking the floor. Good, she said, and that single word fixed 3 doubts in the room that weren't mine. We closed with the kind of signatures that actually hold weight. Not pretty press lines. Binding words and accepts from people who can make trucks move and lanes appear. The frames dimmed one by one. The room came back. The heart pulsed in its bowl like a second clock. Elias, I said, still looking at it. Name the project. He glanced up from his slate. Aegis Luna, he said. Efficient. Honest. A shield, not a crown. Appoint the lunar commander by nightfall. Someone without a taste for speeches. Loop Rachel on med. Rose on writs. Reika on doctrine. Pull 3 redeemer cadres that smile instead of leer. And call Cade. I want his ear on the pylons when they hum. Already on it, Elias said, then paused. And the heart. Mine to carry, I said. Not for the blade. Not for show. For the part of me that has to knock on a silver door without pretending to be bigger than I am. He didn't pretend to understand. That's why I trust him. When I was alone again, I lifted Veilritha's heart and pressed it against my sternum. No ceremony. No chant. Just 2 breaths and the decision to listen. Heat pressed out in a slow ripple, more memory than fire. Wing beats. Not like Bahamut's. The old king's rhythm was straight lines and clean ascents. Vaelritha's felt like a spiral climbing a column of wind. Tighter, closer to the bone, less interested in impressing anyone watching from the ground. He had flown to go somewhere not to be seen flying. "I hear you," I said quietly. Small truths first. Valeria's hum tightened a fraction, as if she approved. I set the heart back, sealed it, and stepped into the outer hall. Avalon's air smelled like tea and hot metal, the scent of a place doing work. Stella's laugh pinged down the corridor from the ops bullpen where she'd set up a math desk that terrified grown engineers. I almost went that way. Duty chose for me. Rachel's med team needed 3 signatures for the Redeemer triage protocols. Serafina had array tolerances to argue with Cade. Cecilia and Rose were already rewriting 3 clauses in a way that would save us a month of pain later. Reka had a list titled "Make It Boring" and a pen she uses like a sword. I did the circuit. I signed where it mattered. I said thank you more than once and meant it each time. By evening, the first wave of crews were already loading for the moon. Choir seats, warm coats, bolt bins, the kind of things wars actually run on. Lucifer sent a northern pilot team south without ceremony. Ian laughed into the wind and traced the first corridor with his finger like drawing a promise in the air. Erebus opened 2 bone gates in a quiet courtyard where children play during the day. The gates looked like doors to cellars. No one screamed. Good. I ended up back in my office when the lights shifted to night. The heart's pulse had steadied, or maybe mine had matched it. The gates waited somewhere I couldn't see, indifferent and patient. Soon, I told them. They did not answer. They didn't need to. Work would. The moon is honest. No air to carry noise, no weather to smear the lines. Just white stone, black shadow, and the work you bring with you. I stood on Tycho's southern rim with a low, conjured map hovering between Elias and me. Lines of light showed what we'd already raised. Our first bastion at Tycho Yard, the research dome, the bone lanes for cargo, and what still needed to exist if the moon was going to be more than a mine and a prayer. "For new anchors today," Elias said, finger-tracing arcs that crossed craters like measured brushstrokes. Clavius Spur, Plato Basin, Serenitatis Rim, and the Tycho West Saddle. "Do Clavius first," I said. "If a demon throws a rock, that's the angle they'll choose." He nodded once. Elias doesn't waste words when the plan is good. He lifted his wrist, pinged cruise, and the warp pads below answered with a soft blue. Ready. We don't move heavy machines up here when we can move people and decide the stone ourselves. The bone gates Erebus opened along Tycho's floor flexed like ribs breathing, and a column of skeletal porters marched out carrying alloy spars and crates of anchor crystals. Redeemers of Ash followed with their lanterns, a gentle gold that makes bad air remember it should be quiet, and a squad of Royal Guard in pressure harnesses took rear watch like a habit. Reka appeared at my left, hair braided tight, eyes narrowed on the ridge lines. "Outer ring at 200 meters, she said. "Anyone who crosses the scriptomark in a hurry gets heavier blood than they like." "Don't make it cute," I said. "I'm not in a cute mood," she said, and peeled away to start carving wards into the regolith with a stylus that looked like a pen and wrote like a chisel. Cecilia landed in a low-G lilt that made dust drift off the rim like smoke. "Chaos poke on your mark," she said, sparks already playing lazy spirals around her fingers. "You'll get your mark," Cadeopolis answered as he climbed up beside us. Tablet tucked under his elbow, face set in the satisfied frown of a man whose lattice is almost the shape he drew. "We lay the weave clean, then the witch pokes. Not before. I love it when you talk to me like a cranky metronome," she teased. He snorted and kept walking. We stepped through the warp to Clavius, and the world fell away and came back different. The crater spreads like a continent, its floor so flat it tricks your eye, wall a cliff of ancient glass. Earth hung fat and blue above the rim, home watching us lay its shield. "Positions," I said, and the crew moved like a story they already knew. Cade marked the 4 corners of the new anchor with his heel, sure and stingy. Erebus opened a slit in space like a book page lifting, and Bone went to work, Porter stacked spars, Jawless foreman tapped clamps into place with maces that weren't maces, and ossuary cranes, clean, quiet skeletons with cables instead of tendons, lifted the first monolith upright. When it settled into the socket Cade had cut with his mind, the ward crystal inside it pulsed once, twice, and went calm. Rachel walked the perimeter without hurry, a cup of something hot fixed to the inside of her glove by a clever strap. She set pure light in the lines the Redeemers would anchor to, little blessings you couldn't see unless you knew how to look. One of the younger techs approached her with a gauze box half-raised. She smiled at him, and he forgot to ask his nervous question and remembered how to breathe instead. That's her gift, too. Serafina paced out the distances between pillars with the same precision she uses in a duel, then set down a tripod that wasn't a machine so much as a clean piece of focus. She can hear drift in a field the way a musician hears a flat note. 2 measures short on the east, she said. If we set the 4th pillar there, the line will pull. Another thumb to the right, Cade called, already moving the base with a hammer tap that didn't actually touch anything. Rose came last to the new pedestal with a stack of papers that would turn this place into something a court couldn't steal later. She doesn't talk about law like law. She talks about edges and promises. Title holds in Ouroboros, use rights shared to the Concord, emergency override reserved to Redeemers if someone tries to be clever. She murmured, signing and countersigning with her own paradox mark that made the ink sit exactly where it's supposed to sit and nowhere else. I put my hands on the first anchor and let a narrow truth sit inside my fingers. When this edge draws a line, the line ends where I say it does. Sword unity isn't for show. Up here it's for door frames that don't vibrate themselves loose after 1,000 tiny moonquakes. I sliced a clean rectangle into the fused regolith shell for an airlock and felt the cut travel all the way through without leaving a whisper of chip. Valeria hummed, pleased with the workmanship, not the drama. Don't get attached, I told her under my breath. Make it straight and I won't complain, she answered from the weight at my hip, voice a cool ribbon in the back of my skull. Cecilia clapped once, hungry for her turn. Cade lifted an eyebrow, go. She sent a small band of chaos through the new ward lines, just enough to lie to them about where north was and how time was breathing. The anchors shivered, then corrected, learning to say no to a trick. Good boys, she cooed at the stone. Do not call my anchors boys, Cade said, scandalized but secretly proud. The 2nd and 3rd pillars at Clavius rose easier. The 4th fought. A seam under the crust had remembered it wanted to be dust and started to slough as the ossuary crane swung the monolith. I felt it as a wrongness in my ankle before I saw it. Back, I said, already moving. Reka threw a strip of cursed script at the slope, and the regolith obeyed the word hold like it had grown up learning manners. Serafina stepped past her, placed 2 palms on the ground, and drew cold out of the thin body of her chi into a lattice that mimicked frost. There's no water here, but ice isn't only water. It's a way of telling a thing to stop moving. The sliding slowed. Rachel's hand flashed. Pure light slid under the crust and made it want to be whole. The ossuary crane finished its swing, lowered the stone, and Erebus's porters settled it as if they'd been doing this since the moon cooled. Thank you, I said to all 3 of them and meant it. We anchored the ward crystal and let the first ring hum. The Redeemers of Ash planted their obelisks around the overhang to make one clean, cold room. A place where fear gets no echo and miasma grows bored. You could feel the tone shift even through a suit, the sense that a breath you didn't know you were holding had been put down. We moved. Plato Basin is a different old scar. Dark floor, smooth enough to blade shave, rim like the lip of a bowl giants forgot. We laid our anchor just under the rim on bedrock. The work repeated and did not feel repetitive. There is a satisfaction in things falling into their right place. Ian pinged us from high orbit. He's been mapping safe transits for pressure sleds and bone lifts like air lanes without air. Leave me a hard lock at Serenitatis, he said. I want to move 3 crates at once when the tide's right. He calls the timing of warp pads a tide as a joke. It isn't entirely a joke. At Serenitatis Rim, the ground wanted to pretend it was friendlier than it was. Cecilia's chaos found a weak resonance and showed Cade where the basal layer thinned. He shifted the whole anchor 2 paces without anyone arguing. Rose ratified the change in 3 strokes. Rachel set a med cache in the shadow of the pedestal and told the Redeemers exactly how she wanted the stretchers stacked. Head to the side, she said. People relax when they can see home. We finished the Tycho West saddle under a noon that never moved. When the last pillar went up, Cade stood and listened with his ear against the stone. Sing for me, he said out of habit. The line hummed a clean note you could feel more than hear. Mesh, I said. The crew took 3 steps back and I lifted my hand. Aegis mesh isn't a net. Nets catch. This is a conversation the stone has with itself. We set it to speak along the spine we'd planted. Tycho to Clavius to Plato to Serenitatis and back again. A loop the size of a country that agreed it would be hard to hurt from above. Threads of light rose between the anchors like lines on a map no one else gets to read. The field touched my skin through the suit. A softness, then affirming. Here is held. Test, Cade said. Cecilia lied to it sweetly. The mesh refused to be lied to. Seraphina nudged its balance with the edge of her will. It flexed and returned. Reka wrote break in the dust, and the dust misread its own letters and forgot the point. Rachel lifted her palm and pure light leaned on it. The mesh let her in and nothing else. Good, Cade said, which from him is a hymn. We warped back to Tycho in 3 short breaths. The yard had changed while we were out. New bulkheads in the east tunnel, an extra pressure door at the med wing, rails along the bone lane so the Redeemers can tie down crates fast when the mood shifts. Elias and Captain Celine Vyr stood over a black slate map of the base that updated itself when Erebus's porters walked across a threshold. Clavius is green, Elias said. Plato green. Serenitatis green. West Saddle green and, he tapped a corner. Extra green. That guy is teasing us on purpose, Cecilia said cheerfully. Vyr's mouth twitched. For her, that's laughter. Outer cordon stood. No untagged anything within a kilometer. Update the continents, I said, and Elias's pings went out short, respectful. South, Viserians. North, Windwards and Cratons. West, Ash Bluffs. East, Mount Hua and Kagu. Central, Slatemark. Not a request, not a boast. Just we placed 4 anchors. Mesh is up. Tycho coverage expanded. No incidents. The answers came back in tones that matched their senders. The South's tidy gratitude, the North's cool received, the West's solid work, the East's brief honor to witness, Central's logged, forward projections updated. I took my glove off and set my bare palm to Tycho's new anchor. The stone was warm with what we'd taught it. Arthur, Valeria murmured, if you insist on building a fortress around the world, at least give me a window. You have one? I said, opening my eyes to Earth hanging fat and patient over the rim. Reka drifted to my shoulder. Tomorrow. Tomorrow we lay the equatorial brace, I said. Then we start tying the small stuff so all of this behaves like one thing instead of 4 proud stones. She nodded. I'll bring more heavy letters. Rachel came to my other side, slid a bottle into my hand, and looked at my face the way she reads a patient's pulse. Eat, she said. Then tell Stella that the convex coverage you drew this morning actually worked. She'll be insufferable if you don't praise her properly. I live to keep her insufferable, I said, drinking. The water tasted like plastic and home. We didn't stay to admire it. Base work rewards the ones who leave the ribbon cutting to people who like ribbons. I made a last slow pass of the mesh with my senses, felt where it sagged and where it sang, and left Cade to hum at it until it was perfect. Erebus's shadow lengthened behind me without a sun to cause it. Spine holds, he said, voice like old paper. Bone lanes can carry 3 times today's weight without complaint. Good, I said. We'll fill them. We stepped through the warp back to the Tycho Yard Commons where the crew eats and forgets how to stand straight for a blessed 10 minutes. Stella had set up at a corner table with a slate full of triangles and numbers and a braid that never stays put. She saw me, pointed at the calculations she'd titled mesh arcs, convex versus concave, and waited. Convex wins here, I said. Your lane math's right. She beamed like we'd lit a second sun. We didn't start the day. We continued it. The Tycho yard map hovered between Elias and me. No grid lines, just a clean moon with our new spine lit in soft gold. For fresh anchors glowed where we'd set them yesterday. A thin, pale ring circled the equator like a pencil line waiting to be inked. The belt, Elias said, tapping Oceanus Procellarum first, then Imbrium Tranquillitatis Crisium. For braces, then tie-ins to the spine. Once it closes, the mesh stops behaving like islands and starts acting like a continent. Procellarum, then, I said. If anyone throws a stone, they'll test the biggest sea first. Cade Opolis arrived without ceremony, tablet under his arm, the corners of his mouth already braced for arguments he intended to win. We place on bedrock or we don't place, he said by way of greeting. Agreed, I said. Reka fell in beside me, hair braided tight. Outer ring at 250, she said. Script lines are shallow. If someone panics, I want my letters to forgive them. Rachel gave her a gentle look. Then make them kinder, she said, and Reka's mouth tipped up in something that wasn't quite a smile. Cecilia slipped a glove on and snapped her fingers. A harmless ribbon of red mana licked across her knuckles and curled like smoke. Chaos test on your mark, she told Cade. Rose joined us carrying a thin case, the kind she uses when she intends to make ownership into a fact of the world. Serafina set a slim tripod on the ground next to the warp pad and tapped a tiny clock she'd tied to it. Sync, she said. Cade's tablet pinged in agreement. We took the warp. Oceanus Procellarum rose around us in black planes and white edges. The floor stretched away, smooth as a blade. Earth hung above the eastern rim, patient and watching. Anchor here, Cade said, and there was no argument. Erebus opened a slit of shadow and bone porters marched out carrying spars and pillar cores. Redeemers of Ash followed with lanterns like soft suns and went to work setting obelisks at 4 outside points, building a quiet where fear would find no purchase. Valeria, I murmured. Cut straight, she answered from the weight at my hip. I'll forgive you if you do. I stepped in, set a tight truth in my hands. When I draw a line, the line ends where I say, and open doorways for airlocks without leaving a whisper of chip. The moon listens if your laws are small and honest. Cecilia's turn. She pushed a gentle untruth through the fresh ward lines. A wiggle in north, a hiccup in the timing. The lines shivered, then settled on the reel. Smart boys, she said. Cade glowered. Don't gender my anchors. Smart rocks, she corrected, grinning. Serafina walked the corners, palms down, feeling for drift with the same poise she brings to a duel. 2 paces east, she said. The bedrock sings truer there. Cade shifted the base with a hammer tap that never actually touched anything. The pillar settled and hummed a clean note. Rachel laid pure light along the places redeemers would tie into later. Blessings you don't see unless you're looking for them. We tied Procellarum into the spine and moved. Mare Imbrium was colder, an old bowl of dark glass. The first pillar fought us. A lava tube under the crust remembered it wanted to collapse. My ankle felt the wrongness before my eyes did. Back, I said, already moving. Reka flicked a strip of cursed script into the dust. Hold burned itself into the regolith and the ground considered obedience and chose it. Serafina dropped to a knee and laid a frost lattice. Not water ice, a pattern of stop, across the sifting edge. The slide slowed. Rachel bent light under the crust and made the broken part want to be whole. The ossuary crane finished the swing. Erebus's porters set the stone like it had always been there. Thank you, I told them, meaning all 4. We anchored Tranquillitatis next, easy ground, clear song, the sort of place that forgives human error. Rose stood at the last pillar and talked ownership into being, signing Ouroboros's hold and the Concord's rights to use without ever letting future courts find a clever angle. When she was done, the papers didn't look important. That's how you know they are. Crisium came last, bright-edged and honest. Cade placed. Cecilia lied. The lines refused. Serafina nodded once. Rachel left a med cache in the clean shadow where scared hands would reach for it. I cut the last lock. Valeria hummed. Pleased. Mesh, Cade said as the 4th pillar settled. I lifted my hand and told the belt what it was. A conversation between stones that had agreed not to fail alone. Gold threads rose where Procellarum met Imbrium, where Tranquillitatis shook hands with Chrysium, then reached down to catch the spine at Serenitatis and Tycho. The field touched my skin through the suit like a steady breath. Test, Kate said. Cecilia whispered a lie. The belt denied it politely. Serafina tilted the balance with the edge of her will. It flexed and returned. Reka wrote break and the dust misread its own letters. Rachel leaned a palm on the field and it let her through and no one else. Cade listened to the pillar like a doctor to a chest. Good, he said, and for him that's a hymn. We warped back to Tycho. The yard had already changed. Rails laid, a new pressure door hung. The med wing stocked in flats with labels in 3 languages because Rachel asked for 3. Elias stood over a black slate map with Captain VYR. The map updated itself when bone porters walked across a threshold. Belt is closed, Elias said. Procellarum green. Imbrium green. Tranquillitatis green. Chrysium green. Tie-ins to the spine are stable. Courtesy pings, I said, and he sent them. South, Viserians. North, Windwards and Cratons. West, Ash Bluffs. East, Mount Hua and Kagu. Central, Slatemark. Short and plain, brace closed, field stable, test passed, incident 0, with a polite note that Redeemers would file a public safety brief by evening. Replies came back like their senders. The South's tidy gratitude. The North's cool received. The West's solid work with a skull emoji from Callie that made VYR's mouth twitch. The East's honor to witness. Central's logged. Projections updated with a footnote from Slatemark's Office of Orbital Policy about shipping lanes I promised to read and hand to Elias. Equatorial brace done, I said. Then we're late for the ring test, Kate answered. Give me 5, I told him. I walked to the outer edge of the yard where Stella had set up with her slate and a knot in her braid. She held up a drawing titled Arcs versus Load and looked at me like a judge. Convex holds better against distributed hits, I said. Concave catches the rare big one. We built both. She beamed. I knew you'd say that. You did the math to make it true, I said, and kissed the top of her head. Back at the map, Reka tapped the belt once. If something ugly drops fast, I can paint no on it from 3 points. Don't paint the moon, Kate said, half horror, half prayer. I'll use small letters, she promised, absolutely lying. Cecilia flexed her hand, little pinwheels of crimson curling in her palm. And if Demon Tech tries to sniff us, I can make its nose think it's smelling its own armpit. That was a metaphor, Rachel told herself aloud, and poured pure light into a set of ward tags for the Redeemers that would sing in the belt's key. Bring the belt up to full. Cade's voice cut neat through the noise. We did. The moon held. Earth hung above us like a coin on velvet. I sent one more ping, not a report, just a line, to Lyra and Tiamat. Belt is up. No cracks. We're not foolish enough to be proud, but we are satisfied. Lyra's reply was a simple good. Tiamat's was a dragon rune that means adequate when a dragon is pleased and refuses to admit it. Next step, Elias asked. We teach it to breathe under pressure, I said. Night test. No one cheered. We just started moving toward the next job. We timed the ring test to Lunabase's night cycle even though the moon doesn't care about clocks. Crews move smarter when the lights tell them it's late. Mistakes get tired and honest. 2 phases, Kate said at the briefing table, really a crate with a map pinned to it. Phase 1, controlled hits. Phase 2, the sky forgets its manners. If the field wobbles, you pull, I patch, we try again tomorrow. Redeemers on corners, Rachel added. If anyone kisses the floor, you don't drag them. You call. I come. Captain VYR's voice was dry as ever. Outer cordon stands. If a drone blinks without a tag, it stops blinking. Chaos pass after Cade's first burn, Cecilia said. I want to see the belt say no while it's busy. Don't break it, Cade warned. I specialize in near breaking, she purred. Rose slid a thin paper across to VYR. Standing writ. In a crisis, Redeemer's medical orders outrank perimeter orders. Signed by all 5 continents. I'd like no arguments later. No arguments now, Vwire said, and tucked the paper away like a weapon. We took the warp to Chrysium's edge. Earth was a dark coin now. The yard lights behind us turned the dust into glitter. The belt hummed at low power, waiting to learn if it knew how to breathe. Phase 1, Cade said and lifted his hand. Erebus obliged. From a shadow slit on the far rim, bone mortars unfolded, not weapons so much as tests with handles. The first shot climbed slow and dignified, a dull lump of stone humming with barely enough mana to count as alive. It fell toward us on a clean arc. Mesh, I said quietly. The field recognized a problem presented politely and dealt with it. The lump hit 40 meters out, met a cushion of held air and mana, and rolled across the surface like a bored pebble. Again, Cade said. The second shot was faster. The belt softened, then firmed. It turned sharp into safe the way a mother turns fever into sleep. Rachel nodded. The Redeemer's obelisks drank the leftover wrong and gave nothing back. Chaos, Cade said without looking. Cecilia slipped a twist into the belt's song. A misplaced heartbeat. A suggestion that true north was a little to the left. The field stuttered and refused the suggestion, correcting like a dancer who knows where her foot belongs even when the floor lies. Good girl, Cecilia whispered, and Cade glared at the sky so he didn't have to admit he agreed. Phase 2, Cade said, and Erebus's mortars changed voice. The next cluster came hard and close, small and mean, micrometeors pretending to be a swarm. The field flexed. I felt the belt shiver, set a small truth in my hands. End there, and the shiver resolved into strength. The pieces hit the line like rain on a good roof. Dust lifted in plumes. None of it bothered the anchors. Hold, Reka said into the calm, not as a command to us, but as a reminder to stone. Sometimes the moon likes being treated like it can hear you. Seraphina stood with one palm on the regolith, eyes half closed, listening for drift. East tie-in is a hair high, she said. Cade tapped a corner of his tablet. The tie-in breathed once and settled. Better. Again, Cade said, because he has never met a problem he trusted until it bored him. The sky obliged with one more polite test and then, like it had been waiting for the cue, forgot its manners. The belt hissed in my bones before the first spark showed. Not sound, intent. Something small and fast and wrong slipped across the field off Tranquillitatis and started tasting our lines like a thief touching door handles in a dark street. Not ours, Valeria murmured, steel cool in the back of my mind. Not dust, I said aloud. Eyes up. Captain Vwire didn't ask what. She shifted 2 squads without moving her feet. The Redeemer's lanterns dimmed to protect night vision. Rose lifted her head and frowned like a judge listening to a liar massage a timeline. I have it, she said. It's reading, not touching. Make it red fiction, I said. Cecilia was already drawing circles in the air. Oh, let's give you a story, she crooned. Her witchcraft curled into the very edge of the field. A lace of chaos so thin you'd mistake it for noise. Anything dumb would ignore it. Anything clever would see it and decide it was the truth. If it was demon tech, it would be clever. Rachel, I said. Pure light anchor on the Redeemers, she replied calm, and set a soft peg in the line that made the belt remember what clean felt like. You can lie to a map. It's harder to lie to a vow. The wrongness hesitated, tasted Cecilia's fiction and decided it liked it. Rose folded space a hand's width around where the taste was sharpest. The fold wasn't a trap so much as a polite room. Here, she said softly, and Reka flicked a lash of script across the fold. No. The wrongness hit the word and forgot how to continue. A bead the size of a fist flickered into visibility. Sleek, faceted, too elegant to be human. Tried to move. The fold had opinions. Stilled. Erebus's shadow leaned. A bone hand as gentle as a nurse took the bead away into a pocket of cold. I will open it where opening won't be impolite, he said and vanished. Report, Cade demanded, because tests are tests even when the sky misbehaves. I lifted my palm, pressed it to the new pillar at Chrysium, and listened the way he listens. The belt vibrated under my skin like a cat after a good meal. "Field stable," I said. "Your girl's fine." "Don't," he started, and then let it go. We ran the rest of the night test without theater. Erebus threw 3 more clusters. The belt caught them and turned scythe to straw. Rachel bumped Redeemer lanterns when the tone tried to tilt. Seraphina adjusted 2 tie-ins by a breath. Cecilia layered 1 last harmless lie so anything else peeking would leave thinking the belt was 10% weaker than it is. I did not scold her. That's good practice. Reka wrote a line no one else could see around an outer approach and told it quiet. The regolith obeyed. It likes being told. Cade looked up from his tablet when the last arc fell. "Enough," he said. We stood under a black sky full of nothing you can touch and let the belt hum around our ankles. It wasn't pride. It was relief shaped like competence. "Bring it down to watch," I said. "Night learnings stick better than day ones." Back at Tycho, Stella had fallen asleep on 3 chairs borrowed from the canteen, slate under her cheek. A new page labeled belt response. Lag versus amplitude. I tucked a blanket around her and took a photo for the family thread. Replies arrived fast. Seraphina's tiny heart. Cecilia's tell her I said nerd. Rachel's don't wake her. Rose's I added a footnote. Reka's good. Elias leaned against the map crate and blew out a breath he'd been saving. "Stage 2 online," he said. "Aegis Luna is a thing." "Name sticks," I said. "Cade. Write it on your tablet so it stops being a joke." He typed Aegis Luna without looking at the keys. "He'll pretend he hates the name tomorrow." I sent the courtesy round again. Belt holds under controlled and rude tests. 1 non-human probe intercepted. No field compromise. Redeemers will file the brief at dawn. South replied first, "Well done," then North noted, then West skull emoji, then East, "We will drink tea to this," then Central with a line about shipping windows that made Elias grunt and start drafting schedules. I walked out to the yard's rim. Earth was a darker coin now, clouds veiling continents. The belt hummed behind me, lines we had drawn into stone agreeing to be more than stone. Valeria was quiet at my side the way swords get quiet when a fight is over and the cleanup is honest. "We can breathe," she said. "For tonight," I answered. "For tonight," she agreed. Then we turned and went to the next piece of work, because that's how shields stay true. Erebus opened the bead in a room that didn't exist. He called it a cold pocket. A slice of his necropolis leaned just out of phase with Luna base, all black stone and quiet pressure. No air to carry a spark if the thing chose to die messy. I stood with him at the threshold. The rest watched through a pane that was glass only because people like seeing glass. "Gently," I said. "I am bone," he replied, amused. "I do nothing else." His hand was a cage of ivory. The bead hung within sleek, faceted, the color of old smoke. Reka's 2-letter no still clung to it like frost. "Valeria," I asked under my breath. "Wrong tool for hitting," she murmured from my hip. "Right tool for a line if he needs one." Erebus tapped 1 facet. A seam appeared that hadn't been there, as if the bead remembered how to be honest. He slid a thin splinter of bone into the seam and turned it like a key. The bead sighed without sound and unfolded into 3 petals. Inside it wasn't gears. It was a lattice, fine as hair, redder than blood, arranged like a web that had learned geometry and then fallen in love with it. Cecilia leaned closer to the pane. "That's not ours." "It's not human," Rose said, already reading the pattern the way she reads contracts. "Forwards, backwards until the lies are lonely." Cade grunted, fingers tight on his tablet. "If that touched the belt." "It didn't," I said. Reka stopped it. "Tell me what it wanted." Erebus lifted the open bead and let thin light pass through the web. It refracted in ways I didn't like. Rachel's hand hovered near the Redeemer's lantern at her belt without touching it. "It's a mapper," Rose said. "Not of position, of behavior. It doesn't care where our stones sit. Cares how they respond." "Stimulus, response, signature," Seraphina said. "Copy, then exploit." "Cheating," Cade muttered. Efficient, Cecilia corrected. Erebus pinched the web at 3 points. It sang. Not sound. Intent. The same wrong taste I'd felt when it licked our field. Can you break it without telling its friends? I asked. Naturally, he said, and his fingers made a small, final motion. The web didn't burn. It became dust that refused to settle. He gathered the dust into a sealed bone ampoule and wrote a sigil on it that meant later in a sharp, dead language. I will distill whatever will not be rude to touch. Cade exhaled. So they're looking for how we bend. We just taught them we can be polite and firm, Rose said. Good first lesson. Second lesson, Reika added, eyes on me. We changed the tune. We randomized response within safe tolerances. I said. No 2 pillars bounce the same twice. Nothing to predict. Cade's mouth twitched. I can live with that. Make it true, I told him. He left already writing. Rachel glanced at the pane one more time. There was a flavor in that web I don't want near our people. Lysandra's mark, I said softly. Her jaw set. I'll lay a pure light wash on the belt nodes the Redeemer's touch. It won't purge what isn't there, but it will keep it from liking us. Do it, I said. We broke from the pocket with a plan and went straight to work. Elias spun up a short, plain bulletin, non-human probe intercepted, field unchanged, procedural notes appended, and sent it as a courtesy to the 5 capitals. Replies arrived with their usual personalities. South's tidy thanks, North's simple receipt, West's skull and a thumbs up, East's hope for tea, Central's footnote about orbital junk our sweep would catch while we were at it. Stage 3, Elias asked. Polar crowns, I said. Cade reappeared as if summoned by the words. North first. Bedrock at Piri is honest. South can sulk until we teach it manners. Redeemers, Rachel asked. Corners, caches, quick lanes, I said. Same as belt. No heroics. Reika rolled her shoulders. Outer ring at 250. Cecilia pulled her hood up like a thief. Chaos test on your count. Serafina checked a new bundle of frost-etched flags. Ice behaves if you ask it first. Rose slid a thin folder into Elias's hand. Ownership writ for the crowns. It prevents arguments we don't have time for. I looked down the corridor toward the canteen. Where's Stella? Updating her triangle truck math for polar loads, Rachel said, smiling despite the morning. We'll bring her a rock. We took the warp. The North Pole wasn't night. It was shadow that had forgotten day existed. The rim of Piri crater held a narrow band of light like a crown. Inside, the floor lay in cold the sun hadn't touched in a billion years. Beautiful, Serafina breathed, and the word didn't fog. The cold tried to take my breath through the suit. Redeemers set lanterns anyway. Their soft suns carved islands out of the dark. Erebus's porters carried stone and spar. Their steps didn't leave prints where he didn't want prints. Anchor there, Cade said, pointing to a ledge that looked like it had never moved. If it argues, we listen. What do you need? I asked him. A hole cut like a promise, he said. Valeria, I asked. Straight, she said. No flourish. I drew a small, honest law into my hands. This line ends where I say, and cut without noise. The regolith parted like silk. The ice under it gleamed like old glass. I stopped where my bones told me the stone began and stepped back. Rachel laid pure light in a thin wash over the exposed circle, not to warm it, but to convince it our hands were clean. Serafina set her frost flags and listened. 4 centimeters left, she said. There's a lip. I shaved the lip away. She nodded once. Cade lowered the first crownstone with a crane that wasn't there until Erebus decided it should be. It settled and hummed a tone only engineers love. Cade's shoulders finally dropped a finger width. Next, he said. We moved sunward along the rim. The second foundation sat half in shadow, half in the line of light. The ice complained when Reika brushed it with script. She stopped, frowned, and wrote in the air instead. A line of refusal that didn't touch the ground but taught it a courtesy. Better, she said, as if the crater had apologized. Cecilia threw a soft, lying breeze across the lane to see if the flags wavered. They didn't, and she made a pleased noise at the back of her throat that usually means she's about to break a rule. I gave her a look. She winked and behaved. At the third sight, something under the crust had ideas about shifting. Serafina felt it first. Her palm flattened on the ground. Her eyes narrowed. "Hollow," she said. "A long pocket. If we stamp too hard, it sighs." "Erebus?" I asked. He tilted his skull, listening. "A vein of emptiness," he agreed. "It would like to be held." "Rachel," I said. "On it," she answered, and wove a pure light brace under the pocket. Thin as thread, strong as will. It wasn't a wall. It was permission to stay, with the promise of hands if it forgot. Cade set the stone. It accepted. We paced the rim and laid the last crown block into the narrow band of sun. When it hummed, Valeria purred. She likes when jobs end where they began. "Tie in," Cade said, and I lifted my palm to the new pillar at the rim. The belt reached up to meet it, threads of gold rising out of shadow and light. The crown's hum found the belt's note, and the whole thing became a chord you feel in your teeth. "Teach me you can breathe," Cade whispered to Rock, and it did. "Chaos," he said without looking, and Cecilia obliged. The crown didn't flinch. "Paradox," I said, and Rose folded a thumb of space along the join, then taught it to unknot itself. "No drift, no hunger." "Script," Reka said to the air, drew one curved line that meant enough, and the crown learned the word. Rachel pressed her palm to the stone one last time. "No residue," she said. "Redeemers can linger here without bringing the wrong home." She slid a small cache into a shadow and marked it with a tag only her lanterns know. We stood for a moment in the cold that doesn't care and watched the crown settle into the world like it had always been part of it. "South Pole next," Cade said. "After we let this sing for an hour," I answered. "Then we move." His tablet chimed. Elias on the open band. Courtesy replies all in. Central asks for a 15-minute window tomorrow to move a satellite without touching your lines. "Tell them to send me the path," I said. "We'll leave them a lane." I turned to go and caught sight of something at the edge of the light. Stella's name lit on my slate first, then a photo. 3 triangles labeled load paths and a note that said convex OK when sun low. I snapped a picture of the crown with Earth peeking over Piri's lip and sent approved. She sent back a sticker of a moon with a smile. Erebus floated across the link from his cold pocket. "A footnote on your bead," he said. "Tell me," I said. "I found a whisper of story clinging to the dust," he said. "Not language, desire. It wanted the belt to want to be touched again." "Lysandra," Rachel said, very soft. "It will not linger where I keep it," Erebus assured her. "I have a place for such things to grow lonely." "Thank you," I said. "Burn what you must. Learn what you can." "Always," he said, and closed the channel. We placed the South Crown in a crater that hated visitors and loved collapsing in neat, geologic decades. Took everything we'd learned in 3 days and a few things we hadn't known we knew. Serafina's ice sang. Cade's hands were steady. Reka lied to a ridge until the ridge found it easier to behave. Cecilia taught a gust to go bully itself. Rachel convinced a seam of dust that today was not its day to remember gravity was a rumor. When the last stone hummed, Cade finally smiled without hiding it. "Aegis Luna breathes in circles," he said. "Then we go home," I said. We didn't cheer. We packed with the same care it takes to close a book you love and mean to open tomorrow. Back at Tycho, Cruz ate, laughed too loud, looked 5 years younger. Elias put crowns green on the map and didn't hide the way he stared at those words. I stepped out onto the yard rim one last time. The belt hummed under my boots. The crowns held. Earth hung above like someone else's promise kept. Valeria was quiet against my side until she wasn't. "We're making a shield," she said. "Not a stage." "Good," I told her. "I hate stages." "Liar," she said, warm, and fell still again. A soft ping in my ear. "We caught a second bead," she said. "Far side. It saw nothing and died polite." "Good," I said. Then, Because honesty is its own shield. There will be more. I know, she said. We'll be here. I sent one last round of plain words to the 5 capitals. Polar crown set. Belt integrated. 2 probes intercepted. Neither returned. Aegis Luna stable under test. Replies came back like different kinds of weather. They felt like a world telling itself it could breathe. We had work waiting on Earth, plans to build and enemies that would rather we didn't. But tonight, the moon held a line we'd drawn, and that was enough. Tomorrow, I said to no one and to everyone, we start teaching it to fight. The belt hummed under my boots like a promise.